The beautiful Lac Le Mans here in the centre of Geneva in Switzerland, home to the Tour of Romandie, where the race is beginning on the closing days of April. And what a beautiful spring we've had here in Europe. And this, the Tour of Romandie, a race which began in 1947. It's a 5-stage race, starting with the prologue right here in Geneva. And I'm Phil Liggett, joined in the commentary by Paul Sherman. We're looking here at the basic overall route of the race, which will take us round to the finish with an individual time trial in Lausanne at the end of 6 days of racing. Good pointer as well, the Tour of Romandie, as it always is for the upcoming Giro d'Italia.
It's kind of the first serious race of the season for the men that we will expect to see later in this season, who will ride races like the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. This is the prologue, 3.4 kilometers, and as you can see, a very technical prologue as well. Just 3.4 kilometers, but an awful lot of corners.
Yes, a lot of riders have had a look at the prologue route, and well they might, because it can be won and lost on the absolute technicalities. There's cobbled streets, there are narrow streets. We go away and up into the old town of Geneva. If you've actually never been to this beautiful city, it has a wonderful old quarter, and then they'll plunge out of the climbs of the old quarter and back down to the Parc des Bastions, where the riders will finish. A very good crowd too here in what is not generally renowned as a cycling crazy city. It's a big bustling metropolis, but in fact they do love the cycling in this part of Switzerland. A nice day at 16 degrees, that's the mid-60s, and a little bit overcast. It's perfect actually for a time trial today, and it looks like the authorities here have turned the famous fountain on in Lac Le Mans, no doubt in honour of the prologue.
Riders always worried about the Tour of Romandie because it's a changing time of the year when we think about the weather, because very often we've seen the Tour of Romandie take place in very wet and wintry conditions, but hopefully that won't be the case this year. Nice to see that Stephen Roche is not forgotten here, Phil, because he won this race back in 83 and 84.
Yeah, they were the great years. Did it again in 87, the magical year for him, when he won the Tour of France and also the World Championship and the Giro d'Italia. What a year that was. And Stephen's saying to me a couple of years later, it all happened so quickly, he really didn't make the most of that occasion because he just couldn't believe it had all gone his way so well. But coming right up to date here, the winner of this event for the last 2 years, Dario Frigo, he's here again. He, of course, with on the hat trick now, he's one of the favourites. And I suspect Tyler Hamilton, who had a wonderful classic season, whose victory in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, is another favourite. And also Alex Zuller, second last year, and Stefano Garzelli. That for me are the big boys, and we're looking now at the winners here in the race in Geneva over the years. Chris Boardman, the British rider, he's a top time trial rider as well. There's the Stade de Genève, or Geneva Stadium, famous football stadium here on the edge of the railroad track, and not too far away now before we get down to seeing the men in the start house. As always, the complete field will take on the time trial route. There's 123 riders in the race, and the best man with the best time gets the first leader's jersey.
Everybody coming off now the early season classics. One or two riders putting in pretty fine performances in races like the Flèche Wallonne, where we saw a Spaniard win for the first time, and of course just recently quite remarkable that win by Tyler Hamilton in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It really was a turn for the books. I think everybody expected Lance Armstrong to win on that occasion, but maybe just over-assumed on his possibilities at this time of the year.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Lance did expect to win. He put in a wonderful attack, and it didn't please Axel Merckx too much either in that classic race, because they felt it wasn't necessary for a man of the might of Armstrong to chase down Axel Merckx. But a race is a race, and Lance wanted to win it. But once they caught Lance back in the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Hamilton took his chance well. Now, this is the situation at the moment. The time trial is actually underway. We haven't got any pictures yet, but we will have very shortly. Pereiro has set the best time for the course, and a good time too, 4 minutes 27 for the just under 3.5 kilometers course. Elmiger there in second place, the Swiss rider. And now this looks like Roberto Laiseca. He looks as though he's writing a letter home, Paul.
Well, he's not one of the great favourites for the individual time trial, but he's a man we'll see an awful lot more of later in the season, and possibly later in the Tour of Romandie as well, because he's an excellent climber. He's won stages at the Tour of Spain and at the Tour de France. But for him, getting away in a time trial like this is always a very difficult proposition.
Nice cheers there for the crowd. They're cheering everybody out of the start house today. 702 kilometres is the overall race distance. This a mere 3.4 kilometre hors d'oeuvre. But as we all know, these prologue time trials can open up more gaps in time than some of the open road races. Now this is the current road race champion here, Alexander Moussa from Switzerland.
He's a guy who could put in a fine performance. He's a very strong bike rider, and as you can see, Phil, right now he is very nervous indeed, racing on home turf.
Well, I must say, he was anxious to go. Listen to the cheers here. They recognise their own in Romandie. I suppose of all the cantons in Switzerland, they speak 3 languages here, 3 national languages. This is the one that has the best flavour for cycling. And now Alexander Moussa is on. And we're looking further along the road here now. Still Pereiro with that time at the finish. And we've switched here. This is not Moussa now, this is a Saeco rider. I have to say, he's, I was about to say, I didn't know who he was. Andrea Tonti it is, and he's already outside of the time of Pereiro. Little chance to see the cobblestones. Look at the back wheels sliding.
Well, this is a very tricky and technical race here this afternoon. 3.4 kilometres. You can see him moving across the cobblestones there, trying to find the smoothest part of the road. He's not going to produce the best time right now. That's still 4:27, and he's 17 seconds adrift. And you get an indication there with the time, just inside of 43 kilometres an hour. But look at this, Phil. Moussa is absolutely flying into the finishing straight.
Sorry, Paul, but this is going to be a best time for Alexander Moussa, and it's going to take a lot of beating. I thought Pereiro's time was extremely good at 4:27, but here comes Moussa now. He's going to be well inside that time. Leans over sharply onto the cobbled road now. He'll look for that smooth asphalt to either side of this central strip of cobblestones. Thank heavens it's dry today. This would have been very dangerous otherwise. And the crowd cheering their road champion home now. Best time only just as he gets there. 4:25.92. It'll be rounded up on the general classification to a 2-second difference.
And I tell you what, I thought he was going to deck it in the corner. Now, this is a man who could produce a very fine performance, a former World Pursuit champion with the juniors, an excellent bike rider, Bradley Wiggins. He's got a very fast time at the intermediary time check, but you can see, Phil, just how technical this course is. You've almost got to stop dead to get around 1 or 2 of these hairpin bends on the course. Now, this is the first part of the climb.
Well, Brad Mcgee, the young Australian who's had a great to win in the Tour de France, a stage at least last year in Alençon, and I must say that he is developing into being one of the great riders of the world. He's the current world champion at the Pursuit. This is hardly a flat track though, is it? We're getting a good look now at the old town here in Geneva. This was actually the very first country I visited when I was an official with the Union Cycliste Internationale. We used to always have our meetings here, so I got to know the city pretty well, and it's wonderful the way they've closed it down for the prologue of the Tour of Romandie. But very technical, Paul. You can win this race purely on technicalities. Back to the finish line, Belly coming home.
Well, it's important for him to try and make himself a good time on the line here. He's not going to win the time trial this afternoon, but certainly for him, he's thinking about possibly taking the overall lead. But in fact, we didn't see it. It happened off the cameras. Fabian Cancellara has just come in with a new best time, 4:23. Now, he is a very good individual time trialist.
Well, Cancellara is only 22 years of age. I'm rather sad we didn't see the finish there of him, but I guess on television thought he wasn't going to do much. Well, he's got the best time. Belly is in as well now, and we're back here with Bradley Mcgee. Now, if anybody, 54.11, that's the size of the chain wheel and the sprocket he's using here. Now, if he's managing to push 54.11 on some of these roads, he really is a strong man. Mcgee now taking the right line through these corners, very tight, but riding them well, making the most of them. The man that can save just a few meters on this course could turn the difference between loss and victory in this time trial.
Great style. He's right down in that aerodynamic position, right in the middle. In fact, look at that. You don't see that very often in professional cycling. He's not even actually wearing socks. That's something that a lot of the track riders do, because they want to get everything into their minds to be completely on the go on the actual day, and he's got himself as light as possible. But Phil, this is very tricky round here. I'm not sure it's the kind of course that Brad Mcgee will really enjoy, because he can't take advantage of his full speed. This is a very technical course here.
It's amazing. That point to the socks, you know, Paul, I'm not too sure whether that's against the regulations. It certainly was always compulsory that you had to wear white ankle socks, but you know the rules change so fast now. It might have changed, and I might be very wrong.
It's pretty difficult keeping up with it.
It is indeed.
They tend to change the rules every other week right now with the Union Cycliste Internationale. Look how difficult it is here. It's almost a dead stop at the far end of this very difficult corner. Brad Mcgee, well, this is still a good time though, Phil. The time to beat is Cancellara, 4:23, and Brad Mcgee just turning into the finishing straight right now.
Well, at 4:03, I don't think he's going to make it here. You can hear the PA shouting at him on the car behind, but I think he's going to slide away, because here's the left-hander, which means he's got quite a way down the cobble finishing straight. He'll quickly seek the smoother road if he's got any sense, either to the left or right. He's chose to come to his right, but already the time has passed and he's still coming to the line. Cancellara has pulled out something very special here as Mcgee comes in, 4th best time only at 5.5 seconds down.
Well, that would be a bit of a blow for them. This is in fact Alberto Martinez of Euskaltel-Euskadi. This team is looking to do something very good here in the Tour of Romandie, because they're looking at trying to get themselves Tour de France selection, and this is a pretty impressive time, Phil.
Well, he's getting to this point slightly quicker than Mcgee did. Now, again, I think he's going to be close to Cancellara, but I don't think he's going to catch him here, because this is a deceivingly long straight down here in the Parc des Bastions. And as he comes up towards the line, the time has gone by. He's going to be a high placing though, even so. Good ride this by Martinez of Spain. Good ride for Euskaltel as well. Slightly quicker than Mcgee, just 5 seconds deficit.
That's pretty impressive to beat a man like Brad Mcgee. This is a man who could cause a bit of a surprise, Tyler Hamilton, although I don't really think, Phil, the prologue is really to his suiting. It's too technical, and Tyler really can't take advantage of his great strength in the flatter parts of the course.
Well, Tyler has been riding well all season. We saw him also perform well in Spain in the Tour of the Basque Country, but he lost that race in bad weather in the time trial, funnily enough, when he should, I felt, have run out the final winner. But that was a while back now. That was he finished second in that Tour of the Pays Basque. There's a situation at the finish line. Cancellara ahead of Moussa in second place. As now an Alessio rider here gets ready for the start.
Should be Laurent Dufour. He's a local favourite. He's always ridden very well in the Tour of Romandie, and for him, possibly in one of his last seasons, look at the concentration on his face. This is such a big event for the Swiss riders, and he will now know that a Swiss rider is leading the event, Fabian Cancellara, and that will give him the extra boost needed. But look at this, Hamilton into the finishing straight right now. He's a little bit off the mark at the intermediary time checks, but even so, I'm quite surprised to see Tyler so close to the time of the younger rider, Fabian Cancellara. And as I look at the style here, it reminds me of his second place in the prologue of Paris-Nice just about 2 months ago.
Yes, and he's round that corner a lot later than Cancellara, so he's not going to touch the leaderboard here with this, but he's not far away, of course, and there's still a long way to go. 5 full road racing stages. As Hamilton hits the line now, he gets 5th for the moment, 4:30, giving just about 7 seconds away to Fabian.
I think he'd be fairly happy with that. And this is the man who won the race last year, Dario Frigo. In fact, he's won it for the last 2 years, and he will know that the man who set the fastest time is his own teammate, Fabian Cancellara. But Dufour, you know, Phil, he's a guy who was really not suited to this kind of prologue time trial. It's very technical. He'll take advantage of the climb, but he'd be more motivated by the fact that he's actually racing on home turf.
Yes, absolutely. Very popular rider. I'm never sure whether he's going to retire or not, Laurent Dufour, because he did announce his retirement and then he came back again. He had a couple of wins last year riding for Alessio. It's his second season with this team. Before that, of course, he raced with Saiko, and it was soon after that he decided to pack it all in, but he made a quick return to the sport. Now he looks as though he's riding extremely well as he continues here. He's won the overall in this race before, back in 1998. He's also won the prologue time trial. Now is he going to do it again here? He certainly knows the roads around Geneva, and he's making the most of it. He's hardly giving himself chance to rest. Back to the start house, last man to go, winner for the past 2 years overall, Dario Frigo of Fassa Bortolo.
I don't think this course will suit Dario Frigo either. He's a very strong bike rider, but not that agile for a short, violent effort like this. Just over 3.5 kilometers in length, but you can see him straight up to speed. Big engine that he's got ticking over as we rejoin Laurent Dufour. You can see Dufour now taking big risks, and that's how this time trial is going to be won. I thought he was just going to touch that barrier there as he went round the corner, certainly not touching his brakes, that's for sure.
There might be a little bit of a surprise here. We've got no part-way time checks. There's his choice of gear, 53.11 compared with the 54.11 of Brad Mcgee. Might be a better choice today, I think. Laurent Dufour looking very, very good here, and he could well be challenging Cancellara. He's a little bit closer than the other riders. It's going to be a tight one, this.
Well, in fact, look at this, Phil. In fact, just taking a quick note, there's hardly any of these bike riders in the race here this afternoon have opted for the low-profile machines. It's because of the fact this is such a difficult technical course, and this is a great ride. Oh,
it's a wonderful ride as he comes down the barriers to the applause of the crowd here. He's just going to miss out, I think. There's the time gone. He might come in for second, the 4:26, third place for Laurent Dufour, but of course there's still a couple of riders left out there, but Dufour has got himself into third place behind Cancellara and Moussa. Here's Frigo.
Well, Frigo, look at the big gear this man is using. He's got a full disc wheel in at the back. He really looks slightly over-geared to me, and you cannot ride a course like this with a huge gear in. You need to be slightly lower down in the gear so you can accelerate out of these corners. He doesn't look comfortable at all, but the time is actually reflected. In fact, Phil, he's a long way off the time of Fabian Cancellara, his own teammate right now. In fact, he's gone outside that time before it even straightens up to the finish line.
Well, I'm quite surprised. Looking at a man here, already 6 wins under his belt this year. He won the time trial on the Tour of Valencia and in Paris-Nice. But he's gone away, well away here from Cancellara. A big surprise there. Frigo only 41st, 4:38.65, and a great win then for Fabian Cancellara. This young 22-year-old has got a great result. There it is for you, 4:23.5. Moussa in second place. Good result for the Swiss. Laurent Dufour there in third as well. Pereiro's time withstood the passage of time. They're holding on there for fourth and bettering the likes of Mcgee and the other top time trialist there, Tyler Hamilton. I don't think Hamilton will be too upset with that ride, personally.
No, I think he'd be quite happy. In fact, just checking that, he's done a very good ride to come across just outside the times of specialists in the individual short effort like Brad Mcgee. Only a second down. Looking further down, Alex Zuller also did a very good ride, Phil, former winner of this race as well. He finished in 7th place. And Fabio Baldato, that's interesting. He's a very good sprinter. He got himself up into the top 10.
One or two riders there looking forward to. Gonzalez, winner of last year's Tour of Spain, also riding pretty well. But here we are, the first man on the victory podium, 22 years of age, and only just at that. His birthday was a couple of months ago in March. Well, it's a month ago. We're moving into May now. And his first victory of the season. He won 9 races last year. Star of the future, there's no doubt about that. Fabian Cancellara. He's starting what is only his 3rd season as a pro. Let's move on then, and let's have a look now at stage 1 here. And as you can see, the weather has changed from that prologue in Geneva, as we're now looking to carry on the opening stage that'll take us towards the 5 days of road racing now, and the weather, Paul, looking pretty rough to say the least. A couple of climbs just as we leave the city as well.
Can change so quickly here, and in fact the climbs are right towards the end there. Rochefort, Mont de Butte and Prix Sèche. They're very good climbs for the attacks towards the latter part of the course. And in fact, they go through Yverdon-les-Bains. That's a small town where Andy Hampson used to live when he was racing and living in Switzerland in the 1990s. But the riders will all be worried about this. Let's have a look at the profile. You can see there the first real difficult point of the day is the climb of Rochefort, climbing up to 790 meters. But I think the most difficult climb really is the Mont de Butte, which comes at around about 25 kilometers to go. It certainly is a very tough finale.
Well, as we follow the riders now as they get going, the rain is actually quite chilly as well. So all of a sudden, that beautiful spring day we had yesterday in Geneva, we've left all of that behind now. I guess that's why the fields are so green just now, is because of all the rain that they are having up in the higher mountains here. We're climbing to about 3,500 feet. It's all coming towards the end of the day, and the peloton themselves is now getting themselves organised.
See how difficult it is as well. There's a small gaggle of riders at the front end of the peloton. Those guys are just trying to keep themselves in the right position in the first 15 to 20 places. But the fact that there's a big long line of riders tailing out at the back of that small group indicates that the pressure is certainly on. We're right now in the town of Butte, which is the first big climb of the day. And I tell you what, Phil, I wouldn't like to be at the back of the group. I think a lot of riders have been tailed off already.
Well, the one rider we were still waiting for the cameras to give us a view of is Simone Bertoletti of the Lampre team, because he broke away today soon after the start, and he's still ahead of the field, and I'm not too sure whether we're going to get too much of a chase back here. This is the sprint at Fleurier where Bertoletti was on his own, then Hamilton did well to get second, and Gonzalo Bayari there of Spain taking third.
It's pretty interesting to see Tyler Hamilton actually mixing in the hotspot sprints out on the course. He obviously feels that he's got the form in the Tour of Romandie this year, especially coming off that incredible win in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Somebody's pulled off at the front there, and it's rather interesting to see how quickly they are going back. This is a very difficult climb. You can see the riders at the back already struggling to stay in contact. And we're now looking at around about 31 kilometers to go to the finish, 18 miles, and what a huge time gap to Bertoletti.
Yeah, this is the climb Le Mont de Bout, and let me just bring you up to date with what's happened so far. The very first sprint at Verdun was won by Bertoletti because he was already on his own. Fabio Baldato taking out second place ahead of Alessandro Bertolini. We've seen the Fleurier finish. On the first climb, which we didn't see, of Rochefort, Bertoletti still well clear. Daniel Atienza went over in second place with the field right on his heels. Martinez, Souza and Inigo Charot. And we're now on the climb here, 152 kilometers into the day, with Bertoletti still out front, and we're yet to see pictures of him with Igor Martinez also in this group here. So the field themselves thinning out quite quickly now, because at this time of the year, and after sort of a classic season, this is an all-category stage race now. These riders are finding it quite chilly and tough.
It's a completely different kind of effort. We've had one-day races so far on the calendar up to now, the races like Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix, and then a different kind of rider coming into the field. Riders who are looking at races like the Tour of Romandie as an indicator to how they will ride in the big stage races later in the year, like the Giro and of course like the Tour de France, and it gives us an indication of whether or not these guys have got their training right this year for the latter part of the season and the big 3-week stage races.
Bertoletti, the last time we had any information, was 15 minutes in front of this race, and it looks like our cameras here are concentrating on the chase behind. Now, there are time bonuses in the Tour of Romandie, the usual time bonuses for the first 3 riders in the sprints, and Tyler Hamilton's done well there to pick up a couple of seconds in that second place finish at Fleurier, and there's also time bonuses on the finishing line as well.
I think the time advantage for Bertoletti now is starting to come down fairly sensibly. The last time we just got a quick check, it was 7.5 minutes, so it is starting to come down. But what a great move by Bertoletti, and I can't believe that he's going to survive, Phil, because there's serious pressure on the front end of this main field, and I'd expect to see the teammates of Dario Frigo on the front trying to keep the pressure high. We're looking at a 10% gradient here on this climb, and from what was a very large field of riders at the start in Geneva, it's actually thinned out quite dramatically to not very many more than 45 riders in this group.
Well, there's no doubt they're catching Bertoletti, because they've closed right down on him. We're still not seeing him, but he's up the road there, and his gap now is very manageable, very approachable here. This group should get across. This is becoming a key group, and our helicopters are all we've got the pictures of at the moment. Riders down there have racing capes on as well, so it's a little bit of a nightmare, but I can tell you that Tyler Hamilton and Dario Frigo, 2 of the real big favourites, are in this group, and so too is Aitor Gonzalez and Zubeldia, all names that we can conjure with a chance for winning this on the mountaintop finishes later in the week.
Well, in fact, looking down from this height, it's rather strange, but I'm pretty sure it's actually the CSC team who are doing the bulk of the work on the front end of this group, and not the white jerseys of Fassa Bortolo. A lot of work being done by Tyler Hamilton's team. They obviously feel that Tyler's got a very good chance of doing well in the Tour of Romandie this year. It's a kind of race that has always suited the big stage race riders who've done well after it in the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. And let's not forget, last year Tyler was 2nd overall in the Giro. Not riding the Giro this year, deciding this season to change his tactics a little bit. He wants to, in fact, have a break after the Tour of Romandie and get himself ready for the Tour de France.
Well, we wish him well there. If he can continue the form he's had, he's going to have a wonderful tour, that's for sure. He'll take his time out, as all the riders do these days. Have a little rest time when you get away from the racing. Just ride your bike and keep your form, but not get stale. And Lance Armstrong is the master of that for sure, not racing as much as most riders. But you know, talking of the leader here, Paul, Simone Bertoletti, he's only ever won 1 race in his life, back in 1997. It was a stage of the Tour of Poland. He's got a succession of blanks. He's been with Lampre a few years now, and I reckon that when he went, the riders just thought, well, just go, because at 20 kilometers nobody's going to chase him in the heavy rain, and content to try and bring him back now on the run-in. And obviously this climb, the steep climb of the day, the Mont de Bout, which is only a 2nd category, but it's still hurting them.
It certainly is. You can see the CSC riders on the front. There's 3 of them setting a fairly serious tempo. That looks like Hamilton in about 4th place. The Lamprey rider there just on the right hand side, he's just keeping an eye on affairs, but the pressure that these riders are putting on this climb right now is certainly shedding 1 or 2 men off the back, and that's quite good to see there just at the back of the group. That actually looks as if Brad Mcgee has managed to say, there he is, Phil, first time we've seen him this afternoon, Simone Bertoletti.
So you see, he wasn't a figment of the imagination. It's the first time anybody's seen him since the 20th kilometre, a lead that went up to 15 minutes. Now, he looks to me as though he's beginning to rock and roll a little bit. The roads are drying out, which is a bonus, but I'm not sure he can still hold them all off here, because they are closing in now. The last time check we've got is just over 2 minutes behind him, and they are coming.
The important thing on a lone escapade like this is to make sure you keep yourself topped up with fuels, and especially when the weather conditions are as bad as they are here. And well, we're looking at Bertoletti right now, and crossing himself, he's looking at it. It's unbelievable. He knows that he's got it.
He's got it, and he's going to enjoy every moment here. Well, the peloton are not much more than a minute behind. They're already in the finishing streets, but they're too late to stop this man. At least they've kept him away from the overall classification, well, unreachable length from the overall classification. He crosses the line, very slow speed. You saw the average speed there, 38 kilometres an hour, virtually all down to Bertoletti, who cannot believe he has just won the opening road stage of the Tour of Romandie. The last time he won a race was 1997, and that was in the stage of the Tour of Poland, and this is a big sprint here, and Glomser of Seiko is leading them over the line, and the clock saying there 1 minute and 9 seconds. They almost have had him. I think it was Mazzolini who got 3rd place, and Vladimir Belli 4th. Cancellara's done well there, the leader after the prologue, to come through in 5th place, and 6th there was Carlos Sastre,
teammate of Tyler Hamilton, looking a bit further down. These are all serious contenders for a win in the overall classification. Massimiliano Lelli up there as well, but there is a big change in the overall classification today, because with that long escapade, Phil, Simone Bertoletti's got himself a double header there, because not only did he get himself the win of the stage, but he's also got the yellow jersey as well.
Yeah, it's a marvellous reward, and well deserved too. If you take a gamble like that, he couldn't possibly have thought he was going to hold them all off to the end, but the weather no doubt put a damper on things in that opening road stage, and they never really organised the chase. If it hadn't been for CSC, he could well have taken a winning lead on this opening day, but it's quite manageable, that just over a minute ahead of the field. And Cancellara in 2nd place, Moussa, Dufour, Pereiro, Martinez, all just behind him, just over 1 minute. But let him enjoy his great moment here. 27 years of age, Bertoletti, as we will now move on to the 2nd stage of the race, which is a ride now of some 178 kilometres. A little bit of undulation, but not as hard as it was yesterday. As you can see, the Col des Pontins and the Montagne de Lucie, 4th category and 3rd category. No big challenges here, but even so, a good opportunity perhaps for the riders to make use of a nicer day and see what they can do.
Well, as you can see, the first climb coming after about 40 kilometres, the Col des Pontins, that climbs up to 1,100 metres. But I think, as always at the Tour of Romandie, it's the possibility of the small climbs towards the end which makes the main field split to pieces. Yellow jersey was at the front. His teammates, Phil, have got a serious belief that he can hold on to the jersey, and Team Lamprey are actually controlling this pacemaking on the front end of the field. But again, this has been a very fast stage so far. Not very many riders left behind at the moment, and everybody, I think, putting the question mark in the back of their minds as to whether or not, when we get to the big mountains, can Simone Bertoletti hold on to his lead.
Looking at the back of the peloton here, and this is going to be one of the last races where you see riders not wearing crash helmets, because very shortly they will become compulsory in world cycling, except on the finishing climbs of the high mountain stages. And I think today they'll be rather pleased, because it is quite pleasant, the weather today. At this time of the year we expect changeable conditions. You can see now nice dry roads. These are the 2 leaders here, and they've been away for quite a long time. Martin Elmiger from Phonak, and with him there Jean de la Tour's Yuri Krivstov. They got away fairly early on, and they've got themselves a nice lead. I don't know whether they'll stay away, but they're at least sharing the pace. They're not endangering the overall race lead at the moment, so there is a chance nobody may pick them up, because this race gets harder in the next few days.
It's not very easy right now. You can see by the pedalling action of these riders, they're just working together on this rather difficult incline and trying to conserve as much of their advantage as possible. Team Lamprey is an excellent squad. They've looked after riders like Pavel Tonkov, another former winner of this bike race, and now moving across to a brand new Russian team, the CC Polsat, and we'll see him riding in the Giro d'Italia later in the month.
Well, not surprisingly, Lamprey now trying to do the best here for Bertoletti, because the two riders up front, they're 13 minutes down overall after yesterday, so they're hardly going to threaten the overall lead. They have been up as far as 10.5 minutes. They're coming down a bit now. They passed through that at around 100 kilometres. So the field now have got them in, well, not within sight, but within manageable reach, I would think.
Well, they've got to keep working on this. Christoph riding for Ukraine, and Mcgee riding for Switzerland. Phonak have been a very aggressive team, another team, Phil, who are looking to try and get themselves selection for the Tour de France, and it's a very difficult selection this year that the Society Tour de France are going to have to make, because there are so many teams vying for those final few spots.
1958 was the last time they tiled the roof on that house, by the look of it. For Martin Mcgee, Paul, don't forget he's not done much in his career, but he was the national road racing champion a couple of years ago. He did a very good prologue in Geneva as well. He lost a bit of time yesterday, and the peloton enjoying some of the beauty of this lovely state of Romandie. But I have to say that they're going to have to do something if they're going to pull these two riders back. They're not going to take the race lead now. I think Lamprey has spoiled the tactics of an overall lead for them, but even so, there's still the race to go for today, and we head down towards the finish in Lucerne.
It's also a very difficult day following up tomorrow for many of these riders, and I think we will probably see the overall lead change then almost for certain. It's a great job being done by Lamprey on the front. You can see everybody today, I think because the weather is a little bit more clement, they're quite happy just to sit on the tail of Lamprey and let them do all of the pacemaking. There's the yellow jersey there. Great to see Simone Bertoletti. I think that was only the second win of his career yesterday, Phil, and must be a big surprise for him to be riding with his teammates all around him in complete control of the Tour of Romandie.
Well, the main field not interested at all in helping out Lamprey. 7:53, so the gap has been virtually cut in half now as they're heading up towards the last couple of ripples of the day on what is basically a flat route. And at the yellow jersey in the centre there of Simone Bertoletti, and first time he's ever worn a leader's jersey. We're looking here now at Kripsov. Good result for Jean de la Tour. Don't forget, Paul, Jean de la Tour here will still want that ride in the Tour de France.
They certainly do, and if they want to catch these two riders right now, we're going to have to see a concerted effort coming from possibly a couple of the teams of the sprinters. There are not really that many sprinters in the Tour of Romandie this year. Most of the riders in this bike race are the riders looking to try out their mountain lakes for the first time. It really is a beautiful part of Europe here, and it's so much nicer for the race when the weather is agreeable, unlike the very difficult day that the riders had to go through yesterday.
They won't want a tough ride today, because tomorrow and the next day they're both uphill finishes, and so they're trying desperately to have a sort of a day off in the peloton, I would think. And because I can't see Bertoletti holding his race lead tomorrow. He looks safe enough at the moment for today. These two riders are showing signs now of I wouldn't call it desperation, but they are getting tired. Longer turns at the front being done by both of them in the hope they can get that little bit of a deep breath behind, because the field are shutting them down as we head down towards the finish. And I think here the Jean de la Tour rider Mcgee wise to keep stocking up on fuel.
Certainly, you've got to keep completely topped up on a ride like this. Especially, you tend to get a little bit excited when you get into a breakaway situation like this. And if you just look at the bikes there, the front forks, there's a small blue device, and that's actually a transponder. They use that to try and get the results back as quickly as possible, and it's a great system. The only problem is if a rider has an accident or a run-in towards the finish line and has to change machines, it really makes a mess of the quick results that come through, because it quite often falsifies them.
But I must say, if the Swiss can't get the timings right, we're all in desperate trouble, because they're famous for their cuckoo clocks. And there's a lovely picture as the riders now head down. They're coming off the plateaus here. These are just small ripples compared with what is coming tomorrow and the next day. And the peloton more or less all compact here. There's nobody notified as being seriously off the back of the race today.
They're actually hammering along at a fairly good average pace right now, and I tell you what, Phil, 10 kilometers to go, 4.5 minutes. The two leaders are going to survive. That's almost for certain right now, unless of course they were to go the wrong way or have a mechanical incident. So the victory of the stage is going to go to one of these two riders. I'm absolutely certain of that right now. They're still working very well together. The Jean de la Tour rider at the back there, he's not too keen, I don't think, Phil. Maybe left a lot of energy in the early part of this breakaway, and he's decided now to take a back seat for the moment.
Well, Krivtsov won both of the small mountain climbs, but the points gained on these small hills will not give him the lead in the King of the Mountains competition, not yet anyway. As they now head down towards the finish here, they are still closing the gap. 4:36 we had, it's now down to 3 minutes, so they're closing it quite rapidly, but I'm not sure they're going to go. In theory, Paul, they can't close it down really 8 or 9 kilometers from home.
They shouldn't be able to do that at all, because those two guys at the front, they've still got a fair amount of energy left in those legs of theirs, even though the main field has picked up the average speed here to around about 48 kilometers an hour. You can see that indicated by the long line of riders just scrambling to stay in contact with the wheel in front of them. And it's a different team on the front. I can't quite get in there to see, but it's not Lamprey defending right now. They're not too worried, because as far as they're concerned, the lead shouldn't change at all. Those two riders lost big time yesterday on what was a very difficult stage, despite the fact that there were no big mountain passes.
Well, Elminger here, remember, he's a Swiss rider. He rides a pretty good ride at all, but I'm just wondering if he's going to actually try and take on the Ukrainian rider from Jean de la Tour.
He's a big rider, the rider from Jean de la Tour. You can see those big thighs of his.
Super thighs.
He probably actually punches a pretty good sprint. I don't actually know very much about this rider. He's one of the newer riders that Jean de la Tour and many of the French teams seem to have picked up. I tell you what, though, that average speed that they're ticking out right now is pretty good. That would indicate they are certainly not going to get caught. It's a downhill section of the course here right now, and 66, 67 kilometers an hour, that actually correlates to not far off 40 miles an hour.
Well, Krivtsov won one race this year. It was a bunch sprint as well, and it was just before the time trial in the Circuit de la Sarthe, the race up in northern France, and he got the stage win there in the morning. So he obviously has got a good pair of legs for the sprint. I don't think Elminger has.
It's always difficult when you're in a two-man breakaway, because in a bunch sprint you actually charge to the line. You're at full speed. You're already up to about 50 kilometers an hour, and that's when the sprinters, that's the kind of event that the sprinters enjoy, when they get thrown at the line at full speed. But when you've been away in a breakaway, it's a completely different feeling in the body, and it's always a very technical kind of sprint, and if you make one mistake, you've got no chance of recovering. We're looking down here on the main field, and I tell you what, Phil, they really are hammering. In fact, the time gap coming through now, in fact, it's inside of 3 minutes. It's down to 2 minutes right now, but still, they're not going to catch these two boys.
Well, as far as I know, Paul, there is nobody off the back of the peloton except poor old Nicolas Gavazzi of Seiko, who's been dropped by the bunch and is a couple of minutes back. But everybody else, there's 118 riders still in this event. There's one behind and two in front, so there's 115 of them in that peloton. How's that for maths?
That's pretty good, Phil. I know yours used to be an accountant, so I'll always leave my bank account with you to sort out.
Well, these two riders, I think they're safe. It's a question of which one's going to take the stage. They're not going to see the yellow jersey change hands either, so Bertoletti can carry it into the hills around Romandie tomorrow. There's an interesting road held up on those plinths as we swing now onto this highway to approach the finish. The peloton all together. The sprinters perhaps racing only for third place now. It looks as though CSC have got themselves involved now.
Well, it's rather strange to see them on the front trying to sort it out. They haven't really got a sprinter in their midst, and they may well just be trying to bring it all back together for Tyler Hamilton to try and launch an attack. They obviously, Phil, have a lot of confidence in Tyler Hamilton and his ability to try and win this bike race. And in fact, the time gap has gone out again. It came down to a couple of minutes, and I think maybe the slowing down in the main field has worried Tyler Hamilton's team, because that time gap there indicated it was 3 minutes to the two leaders.
That's right, but it's only 2 kilometers to go, so they're not going to get in by much now. Probably a couple of minutes on the line, which is all right. They've been away again, like yesterday, for most of the day. There's the result of the sprint at Meudon. Elminger ahead of Krivtsov. I wonder if that's an indicator of the finish. And Bertogliati coming home from the rest of the field. Small time bonuses available there. No Tyler Hamilton or Frigo going for them. Now these two are just keeping the tempo going. There's nothing to gain. They're not worried about time gains. And look at this now. And the man at the back here, Christophe, just loosening off those massive thighs he's got and getting ready for the sprint and looking quite relaxed about the whole affair here as we're heading down towards the finish. We're getting very close now to the final kilometre.
Cat mouse starting. You can see there just a little bit further, there's the indicator of the last kilometre, the Flamme Rouge, international sign in cycling, indicating to all of these riders that there's only 1,000 metres left, and they'll be very happy about that. You can see the rider from Jean de la Tour, he's quite happy to sit there. He's going to force the Swiss rider from Phonak in front, Phil, to open up the gap.
How about, I was just thinking there, Paul, how about that for a finishing straight? That would have delighted some of the world's best sprinters like Mario Cipollini to get a look at that. But you have to judge these very long straights perfectly, and it's so difficult now when there are only two of you. The Phonak man, Elmiger, he is a Swiss rider with a Swiss sponsor and would dearly love to win this stage, but I'm afraid the man in the driving seat now has got to be Christophe, because he's only just over 24 years of age, but he's got the body there of a very mature man indeed. One win this year. Rode his first pro season last year, had no wins for Jean de la Tour last year, but he did turn in a very good time trial. He finished third in the Grand Prix des Nations. So he's got some good all-round ability, this man, if he can sprint and ride a time trial. We'll find out now. It's a perfect lead out by the Swiss rider. He's going to give it his best shot, though. Christophe is coming up on his shoulder, and I think it's a formality. He's going very wide and indicates he's already a good length up on the Swiss rider. But I must say, Elmiger has really given him a tough tussle there, but it's easy in the end. Yuri Christophe of the Ukraine gets the Uzbekistan, I think he is. He gets the sprint there. In second is Elmiger. Now, how long before the peloton, who are actually in that straight at the moment? We'll just have a quick look again at the sprint finish. Pretty much a formality in the end. He's a bit of a rapid and erratic sprinter, isn't he?
He certainly is. He dived across into the middle of the road because he didn't want the other rider to get into his slipstream, and at this point he knew he had it. The Phonak rider did everything to perfection. He kept close to the barriers to see and force the rider to for the rider from Ukraine. Here's the main field right now, and I tell you what, over the last kilometre or so, they really have cut into that advantage of the two leaders.
Well, it's down to around about 2 minutes, I think, on the line here. They're in that straight. And the massive, let's try to squeeze through on the right of our picture here. A little bit of a gap forming now. There's an elite group of sprinters. Look at the shoulders rubbing together there right in the centre. There's a lot of leaning being done on one another as they're heading up towards the finishing line. And I can't even hear exactly who is down there. There's certainly some faster Bortolo riders down there. Seiko, don't forget Ivan Caranta is in this race, and that's Caranta in the Seiko colours trying to get through in the middle. Now he's swung over to the far side. This looks like Angelo Furlan, who's got the front and is looking to very, very good. Now Furlan, a perfect straight dive at the line, takes it on the line. That'll be Cancellara also in the mix, and Caranta as they came over the line, and the clock indicating there about 1 minute and 20 seconds the gap, and so they shut it right down in the end. There'll be no change in the overall classification. The peloton coming in. Let's have a look at the result first. Kritsov getting the victory, his first of the year and his first of his pro career. Elmiger in second place, and Angelo Furlan bringing them all home was Cancellara, Caranta, and Bernard Eisel. He's an Austrian rider on Française des Jeux. There in sixth place. I think we'll find that overall it's all the same. A bit further down the list, another good sprinter there, Lombardi, the lead out man for Mario Cipollini, who's not here. He got seventh. Robert Foster, I remember him racing in Australia. He's a good young German sprinter as well in the places. And there is the overall classification. It's 1 minute and 1 second, no change. Cancellara, the winner of the prologue, stays second. Moussa, who is second in the prologue, he's placed, and Laurent Dufour. The Swiss are still doing well, Paul.
They certainly are, but this man is the man who got himself the stage victory for France, and that could be important, Phil, later on in the year to see whether or not they get themselves selection for the Tour de France. But there's no change overall, and Simone Bertoletti, it's his second day now in the yellow jersey of leadership. But I think he obviously, as a seasoned professional, Phil, he must know that his days are numbered.
I would put it down to 1, actually, because tomorrow it is a really tough day indeed. And we can now pick up action of that stage number 3 now, as the riders facing up to 171 kilometres from Meudon to Léoches-les-Bains, and this has got plenty of hills on the road today, and the peloton already cut down by about 1/3 as they make their way up this climb.
Very difficult route for the riders today. The first chance we should get really to see who are the men in form as we head up to races like the Giro d'Italia, which comes around about 10 days after the finish of this race. And I tell you what, Phil, there's one team have got complete and utter confidence in their team leader. CSC really believe that Tyler Hamilton has got the chance of winning here because they have always gone to the front. There's Andrea Perron in second position, Michael Blaudsen on the front, looking under his shoulders, and somebody's decided to take to the cycle path there in an attempt to move up to the front of the main field.
It's a bit embarrassing when you find yourself up there because it's difficult to get back on the road, but it's all safe as the riders continue, all under the control of CSC, which is a very good indicator that the boys are confident in the form of Tyler Hamilton. This is a big test for Hamilton today because we know he's got good quality in the time trial. The time trial closes this race down in Lausanne in a couple of days' time. But he's got to show also he can mix it on these hills, and this is the big test today. It's a tough finish too as we get right up there to the finishing line in Loeche-les-Bains.
Nice day for the race as well. We're going through some of the very fine vineyards of the Romandie area. This area very much known for its white wines. As we look out here, it's always scary, especially for a bike rider like I used to be, Phil, when you look around and you see that you are completely surrounded by mountains, because you know there's only one way out of these valleys, and that's up.
Yes, this is a beautiful Romandie vineyards here, sitting on the hillside as we pick our way through. This is the head of the peloton, field here all together. Looks like Blaudsen of CSC is doing a lot of work there, right on the front, as they hairpin their way up. He's an average climber, but for tempo riding, he's pretty good. Now, Bertoletti is still in this group, but although the Lampre boys are with him, he is beginning to struggle. Now, he's not a climber, we do know that, and he's not going to enjoy the last few kilometres of today.
Alexander Moussa moving up there into about 4th position. He's the champion of Switzerland in the red jersey. Rides for Team Phonak, but he's wearing a red jersey with the white cross on. Euskaltel riders moving up as well, just on the far side. That's probably Roberto Laiseca. And you can see the tempo that CSC are doing is really putting a lot of riders into difficulty. And further down the slopes there, you can see a group has already been shot off the back.
Just have a look towards the back. I'm just trying to see him pick out the yellow jersey at the moment, but I don't see it there. He might well have been detached from this bunch already. This is good tempo riding by CSC. A lot of Phonak riders there. Alex Zuller, remember, looking for a little bit of form. He's not having a great start to the year, and he was second in this race last year. If he's going to be inspired, surely it will be here in Romandie. The Swiss man, I think, beginning to ride out his final years now, but he's had a wonderful career, but he never did what he always threatened to do, and that was win the Tour de France.
He was always a threat. He was always there and thereabouts, managed to get himself onto the podium, but never actually got himself the big win that he'd been looking for. The great thing about racing in Switzerland is the road surfaces here are absolutely superb almost everywhere you go throughout the country. And CSC are not too worried about road conditions right now, and your man on the left-hand side there, he's done his job. He's just swinging off. Job done for the day. He's going to slip back down to the end of the main field and will probably get left behind. See the preceding cars just in front there, but I tell you what, considering these guys are going uphill, the speed is really quite phenomenal. We're looking at in excess of 40 kilometers an hour, 25 miles an hour, and the majority of this course is uphill.
Well, how different will that hillside look in just about 5 weeks' time? We're on the early days of May now, and the vines there beginning to sharpen the racked up a bit. They'll get picked around September time, hopefully. As again, CSC, they've got a simple plan here, and that is ride their men as hard as they can at the front on this climb and try and split the field up at the back. They've done it to a good effect with a number of riders, but not with all. And in fact, the yellow jersey is still in that group, I think, Paul.
Well, there is a yellow jersey there. It's very difficult to see from this altitude. But
it is hard to tell. It could be a Phonak rider or an Euskaltel.
Well, I would think Simone Bertoletti is still hanging on for the moment, but the pressure is very much on in this main field, and Tyler Hamilton's riders have come around him. They've rallied around to really toughen up the course right now. I think Hamilton must be looking at some kind of attack towards the end.
Now this looks like this is one of the split of the groups here. Yes, this is at the back of the field now, and are we going to pick out the yellow jersey in this group? I wonder why we're slipping towards the back here. That looks like Bernard Eisel shouting at us there.
Not too happy with the fact that he's going out of the back. He probably doesn't want Mum to see him on TV. Because the action is certainly here in this group. A lot of riders under pressure right now. CSC have put a big amount of effort into toughening this race up. I think the plan this afternoon must certainly be to try and get rid of the leader who's led after the first real road stage and has led ever since.
Well, I think they've succeeded in doing that at the moment. We're getting a lot of news too coming through. A lot of riders have climbed off, including Ivan Caranta, the sprinter. He's retired and he's gone with his teammate Bonomi. And Santiago Perez has gone, and Nicola Gavatti, who I told you yesterday was behind on his own, well, he's climbed off now. He's also retired. And so the field is getting smaller as the day gets longer. That's a very, very good average speed at 39.6 today because of the terrain that we've been on. And there's a change of order at the front now. It looks as though Milanese are coming up here to give life a hand out at the front. CSC have fallen back. Now this is within 20 kilometres to the finish here now at Véron, and all uphill now as we get stuck into this first category climb, which will take us right up to the finish at Loeche-les-Bains.
I tell you what, those lime green jerseys of Milanese are moving to the front there. They're obviously thinking about Fabian Jecker, a local rider, rides for Switzerland, and Klaus Moeller, who also we've seen ride very well many times in the past. And looking down there, you can see the riders already starting to leave the valley a long way behind. Milanese obviously got a plan as well, and I can't see too many riders from CSC here now, Phil. They obviously put too much energy in much too early on, and we're actually going slightly downhill for the moment, a 6% descent, which gives the riders a bit of respite before they really start to tackle the climb in earnest. This is Mariano Piccoli moving forward for Lampre, and there is the yellow jersey, so he's still in.
Well, he's doing a terrific ride, and hats off to him here, because as this so often happens, pull on a race leader's jersey and you become a little bit inspired. 60 kilometres an hour, 38 miles an hour. Now Milanese here seem to have taken over control. Well, they haven't. In fact, as Lampre have got back on the front here now. Oh my goodness me, now there's a dizzy shot. Of course, the riders can't see that like we can.
They certainly can't. They don't want to look down there. It's an awful long way down into the valley. But I tell you what, these riders now will be a little bit worried about the fact that the yellow jersey is still there, still comfortable in the group. And that's a psychological sign that he's showing to everybody there. I've got my teammate Mariano Piccoli alongside, and you haven't got rid of me yet.
Well, Piccoli, he is a king of the mountains, I think, on 2 occasions in the Giro d'Italia. He also won the points race in that event. And he won't be afraid of the climb, but he's probably gone alongside Bertoletti and said, look, ride with me, stay close with me, and I'll guide you through. Just don't do anything, and try and boost his morale a little bit, because this is an awful climb that's coming up. We're not really on it. It's starting to bite soon, and it will climb all of the way to the line, and he's giving himself the best possible chance here. I can't believe he thinks he's going to hang on all the way to the summit, but remember, he does have more than a minute in hand in the overall. There's just a chance, I think.
I think what's important is what you just said there. He dare not panic at all. He needs to use his teammate to the maximum, not try and accompany any of attacks which are certain to come, but that little left-hand bend there has put them onto the foot of the climb to Loeche-les-Bains. Climbing up to 1,474 meters. I mean, the average grade is not very steep. It's only 4.5%, but it's the length that makes this a difficult climb, Phil. It's a first category climb, almost 17 kilometers of climbing.
That's right. These early switchbacks too are going to hurt the legs as the tempo riders start to climb now, as CSC return to the fore. And gone, I think, off to our camera there, the yellow jersey suddenly moved very quickly back as CSC now, and this is Manuel Calventi, the Spanish rider, the little climber who's been told to start revving it up at the front. Is that Laurent Dufour in second place? It looks as though it might well be.
Well, I thought I caught a glimpse of his teammate Andrea Noah moving up there as well. And
could be Noah. Yeah, could be Noah.
You get a chance there just to see. These corners are very difficult. They're going round them at maximum speed, which is a big surprise because, after all, we're looking at around about 7 or 8% gradient in the corners right now. And it's a great climb, a very good road surface. But right now, after the long tempo making we've had on the front, a lot of these riders will be starting to feel it grip in their legs.
Well, they've started the climb. Still CSC stepping on the gas here. Andrea Noah in second place behind the Spanish rider, Calventi. Now, just looking down the line there, the yellow jersey very, very quickly has removed himself from the front row. And you can see by the length here, It's a steady gradient. It's a climber's delight. At this stage of the race, I would think they're actually climbing it on the top chain wheel here. They'll be using very big gears to try and break the spirit at the bottom of the climb before they start bringing the strong men forward. Pavé is where we are.
I tell you what, they haven't got rid of the yellow jersey. This is an unbelievable job of work being done by CSC. They really want to blow this race apart here right now, and this is the steeper part of the climb. There are 1 or 2 moments in the climb where it kicks up to around about 7 or 8%, although the average grade is only 4.5 of the 17 kilometers. But it's a tough part here going through the town with that small cobbled surface. It really affects the traction of the machines. But Milanese moving forward, that's Jekker on the left-hand side.
Fabian Jekker, he is the dedicated leader of the MSS, we'll call it, this year. And it looks as though, I wonder if that's Klaus Moeller coming up to him, because he's the rider I would have expected to have got involved in the mix here. It's Souza, I think. And David, they're saying Bernabeu?
Yeah. He's a man on the front setting the tempo for the team. He will obviously be sacrificing himself, and you see that acceleration through town there really has stretched out the main field. It's a pretty good team, Milanese. They don't have the big budget of 1 or 2 of the other teams that take part in all the major tours, but they're in fact this year, Phil, nurturing a chance of getting into the Tour if possible with riders like Klaus Moeller and Fabian Jekker. But in fact that acceleration has forced these 2 riders off the front, and that's a pretty good move. This is Bernabeu, and he's joined there by Jekker. So Jekker is the leader of the team here. Obviously he'll get a lot of help from Klaus Moeller, the Danish rider, and this is a great move by these 2, because look at Jekker sitting in 2nd position there. He's allowing his teammate to do the majority of the pacemaking, and he'll find that when his teammate starts to weaken, he'll try and take off alone.
Well, what they're trying to do here, Jekker, I think, has launched his plan. It might have gone a little bit earlier than he had anticipated, but they're committed now. And Bernabeu is going to have to try and stay there as long as he can. He's not that far ahead, you see. They're just in front by about 100 meters or so from the complete peloton here. Jekker's 34 years of age now, but he's certainly one of the most experienced riders in the peloton.
He's been around for quite a few years. In fact, turned professional back in 1991. And he's ridden for 1 or 2 pretty good teams in the past, but in recent years he's been a member of this Milanese team and ridden races like the Tour of Portugal on quite a number of occasions, but they don't really seem to be opening up very much of an advantage. The tank's coming off the front here right now. It's difficult to see from this altitude just exactly, but that looks like 2nd position in the attacks there. It looks like an orange jersey of Euskaltel-Euskadi.
Well, this is their terrain now. We expect to see the Spanish riders come out here. Jekker has a plan here to try and win the day, and he's gone earlier. It might be too early. It's 1 or 2 of the riders here now getting rid of the crash helmets. That's Carlos Sastre, teammate of Tyler Hamilton, looking for the team car. It's all uphill to the top now. It gets a little bit steeper as well. It's a long climb as we climb up to the town. 15 kilometers all uphill. I think Jekker's surely's gone too soon.
Definitely. There's a small group getting across there. There's about 6 riders have crossed halfway across the gap there. But you can see the acceleration. They're getting themselves organised in the main field right now, and certainly I think we'll see a different number of riders coming to the front. It is Euskaltel-Euskadi, and that strange style there looks a bit like Roberto Laiseca.
There's no doubt who these 2 are. At least it's the team leader, Fabian Jekker, number 121, and Bernabeu. Euskaltel have got 4 riders in this league group just now. CSC are here, Phonak. Still haven't seen anything of Alex Zuller, but that could be him. As having said that, that has got to be Zuller here on the right, the way he's climbing.
Yep. Well, now they're trying to whip up the pacemaking on the front end here. This is one of the riders from Fassa Bortolo.
It's Cancellara, isn't it?
No, Cancellara a little bit further back, and there in fact is Aitor Gonzalez in 3rd position.
Yep.
Now that's good to see him. He didn't do too well in the opening day's prologue, and I think maybe he too was taken a bit by surprise because of the technical kind of course that it was. This is Montgomery on the front. He's actually lying 20th overall at the moment, but more importantly for him is to try and toughen up the race for his teammate there in 3rd position, Aitor Gonzalez, and Cancellara just a little bit further back in about 7th or 8th. And I wonder if Dario Frigo is going to do anything this year, because we've hardly spoken about him since the opening day's prologue.
That's true, and he's got great form, remember, 6 wins already, but he knows he's got to show himself today. there's still a long way to go on this climb, and Bernabeu, I don't know how long he can keep this sort of a tempo up. He's got 13 kilometers to go, 4 seconds they're saying, and coming down quickly now. He hasn't really taken his team leader anywhere, and he hasn't actually broken up the field either in the chase. There's still a very, very big bunch back there.
It's a very fast climb here right now, and this guy really is giving his all, and Jekke just sitting there. But Jekke hasn't put too much effort into this right now, and he'll be waiting to see if there's a small group of riders comes across. But you can see on the front there Sven Montgomery doing a great job for the team, and I wonder if Aitor Gonzalez is going to take over. Gonzalez is not one of the great climbers of the international peloton, but he does have the ability to defend himself pretty well on climbs like this, climbs that you can actually handle with a very big gear. But I tell you what, Montgomery's putting a lot of riders into difficulty there. That's Cuesta in second position, riding for Cofidis. Inigo Cuesta, the Spanish rider.
Thinking back there, Paul, Sven Montgomery, the last, we know he can climb because he was the first man over the top of the Col de Tourmalet in last year's Tour de France, and then the next day he'd retired from the race, rather sadly. But he's now bringing the field right up here and putting Fassa Bortolo particularly in the mix again with number 1, defending champion for the past 2 years, the winner, Dario Frigo. He is in that group for sure, because just look how many riders are still in the mix here. That is a very, very long peloton. So quite clearly, although it looks a hard climb from our television cameras, quite clearly it is not that difficult yet, but it does get steeper towards the top.
Still a very big group, and I'm surprised because of the pressure we've seen coming on the front of the main field consistently since the start of this climb. But obviously a lot of riders hanging on. It's the first chance they've had to really go into the big high mountains this year. It's a long climb, this 17 kilometers in length, and we've only so far done about 5 kilometers of those, and it's amazing to see how fast these guys are going. 12 kilometers to the summit right now, and I'm surprised, Phil, to see that this still is a very large peloton.
It's amazing because there's just nobody coming off the back of it, but they can't keep this sort of speed up without somebody cracking it very, very shortly, because at the end of the line there, just look at the gaps now between the wheels. There's 2 riders just about hanging on by their braces, I think.
Yep, definitely. They're just trying to survive here right now. You've got a lot of work being done on the front end. Rather strange to see, before we got to the climb, a big amount of work was done by CSC, the team of Tyler Hamilton, and right now I can't see any of CSC riders on the front end of the main field. They're in about 4th position. You can just see Laurent Dufour, 5th position actually. He's sitting on the tail of Aitor Gonzalez, and it looks as if it might well be Dario Frigo has moved up there as well.
In fairness, this is a big test for Gonzalez right now, because he needs to show us some form, or more particularly his new team of Fassa Bortolo. He's now coming over to them. He'll probably have a go at the Giro d'Italia. I think his main object will be the Tour de France, but I wonder if he'll take part in the Tour of Italy. The team might put pressure on him there, because they could do with a man that could go for the overall.
Well, he's a man who's being paid an awful lot of money this year, and who was switched across after his win in the Tour of Spain at the end of last season. In fact, there was a bit of turmoil in the early part of the year, because he wasn't quite sure exactly which team he was going to sign for, because apparently he had a double contract. But finally all that has been sorted out, and he now rides for Fassa Bortolo. You can see that pressure starting to kick in right now. I think 1 or 2 riders have started to disappear. Ongarato at the front there. There is Frigo wearing number 1, so he's obviously thinking about trying to get himself up there here this afternoon. This is the kind of climb, Phil, that would suit Frigo. He's a very strong bike rider. He's currently 25th overall in the classification, a minute 16 back, but that could all change, because that minute 16 is actually on Bertoletti, and he's not very far behind on the other riders, the big contenders.
Absolutely. And talking of Bertoletti, I haven't seen him for ages. Ever since they hit the climb, he disappeared. Now there's another attack here by Milanese. Now this isn't Fabian Jekke, so we'll catch up and find out who it is very shortly. Certainly working very hard was Gonçalo Amorim, the Portuguese rider, was on the front moments ago. This could well be him trying to stretch them, but he's gone back anyway.
But in fact, he was nailed back there by Aitor Gonzalez himself. So Gonzalez obviously not riding for himself here this afternoon, Phil. I think he's thinking more about his team leader, Dario Frigo, the winner of the last 2 editions of this bike race. It's all back into the fold right now. There's Gerrit Glomser in the middle in the red jersey. He's the rider from Seiko. He's in pretty good form this season, but I tell you what, I thought they'd caught this man, and he's gone again. Absolutely.
And quite clear, MSS have had a plan all day on this climb. They've used 2 of the men. Now, Klaus Moeller is the other rider from Denmark. This isn't Klaus Moeller, but he is the rider I would expect a good performance out of. Now, we might see his number here. Amarine, I thought it was, and in fact it is Jose Maria Delomo, the Spanish one, the Spanish rider's on the team, who's now gone clear.
Well, he's got a slight advantage, but I can't believe he's going to ride off the front end of the main field. In fact, this is one of the riders who a couple of years ago posted a positive test for EPO. He's actually banned from racing in France at the moment, but he seems to be able to take part in races outside of France. And very strange, the international rules right now, because some riders can be declared positive in certain countries and it doesn't apply in different countries.
That's correct. The French doping agency have a different set of rules to the Union Cycliste Internationale. And, but Paul's absolutely right. This rider unable this year to race on French soil, at least in French races anyway. So he's now getting away from the field. He might have a little bit more of a chance than the likes of Fabian Jekker. He may not be quite as tightly marked. They might use this man now as a stepping stone, get somebody away and cause others to bring up the reaction. You can see on these corners now that this is beginning to bite a little bit as we're getting pretty high up, heading up today to over 3,500 feet, near 4,000 actually. And look at this, is that the wobbly old Alex Zuller? I think it is, who's coming up alongside. It could be, no, it doesn't look like Zuller, Paul. It could be Moussa, that.
Well, looking further back there, it's all come back together. That's Glomser in third position. There's Tyler Hamilton now moving up into fourth place. So Tyler has taken advantage of all the work done by his teammates. There on the far side, you can see Fabian Jekker. He's still pretty attentive. He's in second place. Hamilton looks very comfortable indeed. And now we're seeing the main field starting to split just a little bit. Riders moving off the back end. I'd like to get to the back end of this group and see if the yellow jersey is still here, because if he is, that's a pretty remarkable performance by Bertoletti.
I have to say, I can't see him now. That was Alexander Moussa. He's dropped back into the line a little bit though. And still the Milanese team ride very, very strongly here. Fabian Jekker has forced himself back onto the scene, second place. Tyler Hamilton, that very distinctive riding style he has, he's there as well. I'm just trying to see if we can peep around these riders and see anybody else. I can see down the back there also Popovic is also about 8 men back.
Hamilton there got that bandage on his wrist there after that very dramatic crash he had about 2 weeks ago. And there's the yellow jersey. He's off the back of the group, arrière du peloton, which means he has been left behind. He's got a couple of teammates with him. The important thing right now is not to panic, but I think the race is pretty much over from him. Certainly not over at the front end of the field.
Yeah, a small time bonus at the summit, and he's only a minute to the good. A new yellow jersey awaits someone, I feel. And again, MSS, who have done most of the tactical riding on this climb using all of their team, at last are forcing definite splits in the peloton. Well, I did say it got harder towards the summit, and this is where it begins to bite now. We're looking at 8% of climbing here, and it looks like Jekker himself has got himself onto the front now too. This is a good little group that's beginning to get clear. Probably about 15-20 riders just now.
Hamilton's up there in second position. And now we're seeing this is a very good move here by the Milanese team. They've got a lot of riders capable of coming to the front. They really want to put pressure on this whole field here right now. That's Bernabeu going up. He's done a lot of work for Jekker so far. He basically, I think, is the man who is expected to do a lot of pacemaking in this group. And the pacemaking by a lot of these teams has reduced the numbers in that group. It was a large peloton a few moments ago, and now it's come down to, as you say, Phil, not very more than 15 or 20 riders.
But this attack here by Francisco Perez was the one man we weren't expecting. He's waited and he's seen his teammates go for it, and now he's launched a very good attack here. Now this one, judging by the speed of it, has got a chance. Let's just have a look. We've got about 15 riders down there now, and they're all looking at one another. There are still a number of MSS riders here, so this is a good move by Perez.
Well, it is. In fact, this guy won a race last month, a race called the Grand Prix Mitsubishi in Portugal. He won the first stage and held on to win overall, so he's a pretty good bike rider. But I think this will take the pressure away from his teammates, because obviously everyone would expect here the team leader in this race to be Fabian Jekker. He's super motivated to do well here this afternoon. As we go back to the main field, you can see a lot of riders really trying to get this bike race together, and Jekker now sitting in about third position there, Phil. He's just going to sit there. He's quite comfortable. He's allowing everybody to use up all of their energy to try and chase down his teammate. Laurent Dufour is there on the right-hand side. He's in about 5th place right now, and with 7 kilometers to go, Perez has a 14-second advantage.
15 as we speak. And Gerrit Glomser was the Seiko rider there. He won last year the Tour of Austria. He was up there. He's dropped back a little bit now. I think this is Alexander Moussa, who's still doing the majority of the work for the Phonak squad on the front. But you may have caught a glimpse of the faces there of those riders, and they are now very, very definitely under pressure. And this rider Perez is riding very, very smoothly here as we climb up towards the finish in Léoche-les-Bains. Still a little way to go, but he's getting up there and he's opening the gap, the biggest gap we've seen. It has been a very rapid ascent, this. The rider's hitting it quickly, putting the race leader in difficulty after only a couple of kilometres, and have continued to attack one another. Still on the front, it's Phonak trying to put matters to rights here.
Well, there's Dufour. He looks like he's in a spot of bother there, just moving out, slipping back down the group of riders. Maybe he's just checking on who's in the group with him. There's a lot of orange jerseys of Euskaltel-Euskadi. The green jersey with the blue shoulders there, that's Fabian Jekke. A bit further back is Andrea Noe. And I would say, Phil, there are about 3 or 4 riders in this group from Euskaltel-Euskadi, so I would expect an attack to come from one of them as we get closer to the summit.
And what about Zuller? Because Zuller is using Alexander Moussa all of the time, and he's in that group. I saw him about 5 or 6 men down. Inspired on his own land? We're probably going to find out pretty soon, I would think, because time is beginning to run out. And Perez is looking very cool here, like a man who's enjoying the occasion. There's Laurent Dufour just behind Tyler Hamilton. Noe on the far side. What a great rider he is when it comes round to the Tour of Italy. Never does a lot of good racing, and yet always does a good ride in his home tour, and he's warming up for that, no doubt, right now. There's Alex Zuller riding very well on the back wheel of I think that's Gerrit Glomser, 135, yes, and Fabian Jekke is still in the mix as well.
Well, it is rather strange to see Alex Zuller in the new colours of Team Phonak. After all, he started the season riding for Coast, and I think he was a little bit upset the way things were developing, and he decided to jump ship.
Well, there's still a lot of doubt surrounding Team Coast, but Zuller has taken an early decision. He's moved across to Phonak. This is the man who is setting the pace today, and Francisco Perez is still moving clear, and judging by his riding style, is feeling full of confidence now. The only race this man has ever won, but then again, in fairness, Paul, he's only been a professional. This is only the start of his 2nd year, because he's even so 25 years of age, was the overall race, overall classification in Porto Lisbon over in Portugal there.
Well, he doesn't look like a man who's going to weaken right now, and this may well be the secret weapon of Milanese, because I think everyone was looking at Klaus Moeller and obviously at Fabian Jekke, and in fact, Phil, 6 kilometres to go. You can see he's actually got a pretty serious advantage. It's 28 seconds right now, and the number of riders in that second group there is actually starting to dwindle.
This looks like, is this Indigo
Mcgee?
Mcgee. David Mcgee, not too sure where he is. Oh, he's up with the leaders by the look of it at the moment, sitting here in the back wheel of Pierre Bourguignon. And this must be the tail of that front group just now, or a little group being dispatched backwards. Yes, they're just tagged on to the group here. Bit surprised to see Mcgee in trouble. This is Glomser just off our picture there.
Roberto Leiseca's in this group as well. A little bit further up, the other Cofidis rider is Inigo Cuesta. He's number 32. And interesting to see that at the back of the group now, we're actually surrounding the group by Milanese riders, and that man there just taking up the back place was Bernabo, and he did a lot of work in the early part of this climb. Tête de la course indicates we're looking at the front end of the bike race, and this man is a superb climber, that's for sure, Phil, because Francisco Perez is opening up a pretty serious advantage over this group, and they're not really able to peg him back right now.
Well, it takes a couple of years to settle in as a pro. He turned pro just a little bit late, at 24 years of age perhaps, but he's settling in now. 2nd season underway and leading the Tour of Romandie, and a chance of a yellow jersey as well at the finishing line if he can stay away. He's climbing extremely well here, and he looks good, and you know, he deserves to win now, because this has been a wonderful piece of fine, aggressive and tactical riding by MSS. The only one rider I haven't seen, Paul, and would have expected to have seen, was Klaus Moeller.
This is a bit strange. This looked like his teammate here, Fabian Jekke, getting off the front. I would think he was probably marking the moves there. This is Tyler Hamilton. Hamilton quite happy just to sit in position and keep an eye on everybody else.
And the guy in red is Gerrit Glomser, I think. There's 2, and that's Carlos Sastra's come across here. Oh, that's the Phonak rider, that's Moussa. Moussa is up there, champion of his country. That's why he's in the red strip, not the white strip of his team. That's a very classy little group that's got away.
Serious move here. Looks like Jekke on the front. I think Jekke will have to play the defensive position right now. He's in a difficult situation because he's the man who is regarded as the leader. It is Alexander Moussa in there. Carlos Sastre is a teammate of Tyler Hamilton. He's up alongside Hamilton. And tucked on the back there is Laurent Dufour. There he is.
That's an amazing rider Laurent is. He reads the moves so well. And here he is again, inspired by the fact he's racing in the Tour of Romandie, a race he's won in the past. And just when you think he's about to call it quits, he's back in the move again. Carlos Sastre, Tyler Hamilton, this is a super group.
Well, in fact, I tell you what, Sastre was setting such a pace there that I think he put his team leader into a spot of bother, because Hamilton was almost losing the wheel. He had to dig pretty deep, and from a group of 15-20 riders, we've now reduced that to 5 very interesting names. Francisco Perez on the left-hand side. He's around about half a minute in front of this chasing group of 5 right now. Well, Carlos Sastre will do everything he can to try and pull it all back together for Tyler Hamilton. Laurent Dufour, as you said, Phil, is a very sensible bike rider. He's not got any teammates around him, but he has read the move and he has got himself into this very serious counter-attack. We're inside now, about 4 kilometers to go to the finish, and Perez is well off round the corner.
Well, Perez is up there just as we can just peep round the corner of those trees. This is a wonderful move for Tyler Hamilton, because I almost forgot, Dario Frigo has missed the ship, and so too has Aitor Gonzalez, another man I would have put in the mix for a likely victory. Zuller has missed it, so clearly not riding as well as I thought he was. As we disappear momentarily into the rabbit hole there, we go back out and find that Perez now is having to commit himself. He knows, he must know, that there's been a reaction from some of the race favourites, but the man surely who's going to profit from all of this is the American Tyler Hamilton, and Sastre is nursing him.
He certainly is. He's got a very good teammate alongside him. Those 2 riders work very well together, but this guy here for me is the revelation so far. It says 5 kilometers to go there. I thought he was inside of 4, but when you look at this guy's pedaling action right now, Phil, he's not showing any signs of a rider about to weaken. He's still got good form. He's still ticking the legs over. He's up onto the big ring you can see there on his chain ring, so he's obviously come to a slightly flatter part of the course, but he doesn't have complete and utter confidence in himself. You see how he keeps looking round to see what's going on behind.
He just knows this group is coming. And they're saying Popovic has got on here. Well, he must have come across on his own, and there that's him on the back. Yep, that's him on the back. Lambau credit, red shorts. He's come across on his own. Now, he's a young man who rode well in last year's Giro.
I think he was the best young rider in the Giro d'Italia last year, and the gap is starting to come down now. 17 seconds, and it's a 6-man chase group. The 2 riders from CSC really are giving everything right now to try and turn the overall classification upside down. 4
kilometers to go. There he is, but it's a long way, you know, when you're climbing steadily uphill. And there is the finish too, there in the town of Les Hoches-les-Bains, a little spa town high in the mountains here in Romandie. It's sitting at just under 4,000 feet. Snow all away for the winter, and looking forward to a nice summer here in this spa town. But right now it's going to be pretty much likely that we're going to have a Spanish winner here in Francisco Perez. It'll be the biggest win of his career. I think it will be safe to say that. He keeps looking over his shoulder. He's a very tall rider. That's a big bike frame he's riding there.
It's a fair way down in the overall classification, 31st, but that's a minute 17 down on Simone Bertoletti, who was a minute in front of everybody else. So he's actually not too far away, Phil, from getting himself the yellow jersey here right now, if he can just stay off the front of the group. If he gets caught, well, Minetti have got a great situation, because in 3rd place there you can see Fabian Jekke. If they do come back, then we certainly will be a counter-attack, and here is Popovic sitting on the back there. He's a certain star of the future.
Yes, Colmargo's one of his sponsors there, and Ernesto really thinks the world of that young man, and we'll see if he can live up to his ever-growing reputation this year. First time we've seen him in the thick of the action so far this season, as we now fly into the village at the top of the mountain at Les Hoches-les-Bains, and looking now as though Spain are going to take out the victory. It all depends whether or not he can hold the gap, because he is very close to the leader's yellow jersey in this race. But you know, if they shut it down, you can perm 3 or 4 of those riders in the chase group who could be the next leader.
Absolutely, and one of those I would think is the teammate of Francisco Perez right now, because Fabian Jekke is just sitting on the tail of the 2 CSC riders and allowing them to do all of the pacemaking.
Well, the crowd all watching on here. He's in the town, but the climb goes on. We're looking for the final kilometre banner. Here comes the pursuit. They're not very far behind because that's a similar corner there. And Yeka now has dropped back. He's waiting, probably hoping to some degree that Perez is pulled back so he can have a go, but he won't endanger Perez. He'll try now and just mix it with Tyler Hamilton, spoil the rhythm of the chasers. Laurent Dufour, especially being Swiss, is going to look also for the race lead, but he'll have to close it down here. Here comes Perez now.
Tête de la course, he'd be very happy to see that, the front end of the bike race. His gap is still holding though, Phil. It's 19-20 seconds, 3 kilometres to go right now. He, I think now, is just starting to believe in himself. Look at the way he's getting every ounce of energy out of his body. He's all over that machine right now, out of the saddle when he can to keep the tempo nice and high. He can almost hear the speaker at the finishing line right now as he moves across to the far side of the road. He's got a very good advantage. That corner there is really going to hurt. But that group behind, I think from the 6 or 7 riders we can look at right now, we can be almost certain that the winner of the Tour of Romandie is going to come from this group, because it's really amazing to see. We've got these 7 riders who've blown the rest of the race apart, but they've still got to catch the one man in front.
I mean, another dose of mountains tomorrow. Let's not forget either. Very fast corner there by Sastre. He's opened up a gap on his teammate there, Tyler Hamilton. It's time to ease back and let Tyler hook up again as we continue to ascend here to a village which sprawls across the mountain, shades of the winter departing, still present on top of the climbs, and this man now still holding the gap and slightly increasing it there. He's worried, he knows who they are behind, he's been told by his team manager, and he knows now he can't save anything because there could be a race lead for him.
Well, he's still got the advantage of having a teammate in that chasing group as well, and that's the advantage he knows he's got to work and take advantage off, because if he does get caught, he knows that the counter-attack will come from Yeka. Yeka there in second position, dancing on the pedals. He's looking very comfortable right now. A bit further back in the darker jersey is Laurent Dufour. He too will be waiting for it all to come back together. And this man, for the moment, Francisco Perez, is not losing any of his advantage at all.
Perez now, head down, then he looks up, puts his head down again. He's looking for 2 kilometres. I think that is it there. As he comes on now, he's getting into the closing kilometres of this race. It's not long to go, but when you are at the limit of your capabilities, you just wish that finishing line would come. He continues to ride. You see, he's got the chain there on that big chain wheel now. This is a heavy gear he's pushing to try and stay away. Very tall bike rider. It's unusual for a good bike rider to climb like this when he is so tall. Those long legs reminds me of a rider who sadly was killed many years ago, Gerard Saint, the Frenchman.
Well, I tell you what, this guy, he's doing such a great ride, but he doesn't have confidence in himself at all, Phil. He consistently keeps looking back over his shoulder to see where the other riders in this bike race are. Well, they're not too far behind, 17 seconds, and he keeps looking up the road, and shortly he will get a chance to see the final kilometres. But he's just, don't look back, just keep going. That's the important thing to do in a bike race like this.
Well, we go over under so many of these bridges, I'm never sure. There's the 2 kilometre sign. We've just gone past on the roadside, and our caption's been saying 2 kilometres for at least half a kilometre. So well, we just got to go by what it's saying on the road there. 2 kilometres to go now as we twist our way to this little spa town. These are the narrow chalet roads here, and they put the finishing line right up on the top. It really is the most difficult situation here. And look at that now, another sharp, tight little bend. Thank heavens there isn't a big bunch racing into town right now, because it's rather tortuous as he makes his way up towards the summit.
It's a pretty tricky run into town here after what has been a great ascent. Look at this guy's bike's all over the road. He's not even, because these corners come at him so quickly, he actually can't get a very good line into the corners. He's losing a lot of impetus, and he's losing a lot of his time gap there. You see G2 is group number 2. They're in fact 11 seconds behind him, and that's all because of the fact that he's lost a lot in those corners.
Well, bear in mind these tortuous bends, it's going to also slow down the chase group here. And if Paul, I think he's gone off course.
Well, I'm not sure.
I think that policeman was indicating the other way. He's got to be off course because he's in amongst the cars here.
there's a problem here. There's a serious problem here. He's followed this motorbike. This is definitely not the course. They're trying to stop him, and he has no idea right now.
I don't believe this.
You very rarely see this.
He's taken what they call the deviation.
Those motorbikes just coming down towards him,
and our camera's staying with him. I mean, there's the television which shows the crowd at the finish. What's going on? He's in amongst the team buses. He is racing the wrong route. Even the neutral service car's gone off course.
Everybody's gone off course. This is so sad for this guy. We actually need to get back to the race because he is off course right now. He's behind the finishing line and he has no idea, and I'm sure they can't do anything at all about this.
Now, what are the judges going to do about this? Because we are not in control of our television cameras. I presume the television has realised he has taken the wrong road, because I'm sure he has. There wouldn't be parked cars, and we've not seen the finishing line. He was approaching the finishing line. He's taken, and here is the finish now, and this is the sprint here, and this is a very different sprint. They believe, I would think, they are sprinting for only the second place finish. But in fact, it's not going to be so. That's Gerrit Glomser leading out Laurent Dufour. I can't believe they know that the win is at stake on the line. The clock is waiting to start. Nobody has come in. 100 metres to go. Glomser is there, Hamilton. And this is going to be a very strange finish indeed. Yekke is there now. Can he get revenge for his teammate who has gone off course and is watching from afar? And in fact, on the line, it is Laurent Dufour who's got the best. And in there is Yekke in second place. And that is amazing. Now, I don't know what the judges are going to do here, because clearly the winner on the day would have been Perez. But you know, there is a rule. The onus is to stay on the course, is that of the rider. But clearly, on a very strange finish like that, with motorcyclists and service cars making the mistake, I think they've got to make some amends there.
Well, that's very strange. You very rarely see that at this level of the sport. This is the next group coming up here right now, being led home there by Alex Zuller. There's Roberto Laisaca at the back end of the group. Andrea Noe is in this group as well, but that is such a sad move. Francisco Perez, Phil, for me, he had the race in the bag, but Laurent Dufour knew what had happened. He had his two arms up to salute his victory there. He knew that the other rider had gone off course.
A very good point. Goodness knows how he knew that. But the fact is that nobody else appears to have made the same mistake, and that might not go down too well for Perez, because all of the others here are coming in on the correct route. 4.5 hours in the saddle. The clock just counted through 1 minute. Zuller's group is in there. Laurent Dufour will certainly be given victory on the day. Yekke crossed the line in second place. Moussa was there, Hamilton, Sastre, Popovic, Gerrit Glomser, and then Zuller came in with a different time to the others, losing the best part of a minute.
This is a group of Aitor Gonzalez coming up to the finishing line right now, and there's nowhere, I haven't seen anything at all of Francisco Perez, and I really wonder where he is, Phil, because that was such a sad move. He almost certainly had the victory in the bag. It might have been down to just about 10 seconds. But, well, you've been a referee in the past. You obviously know what decision they're going to make.
Well, I don't. I know what decision I would make, and that would I'd certainly give him the time of the day's winner. But we'll have to wait and see what they do. He was off course. He hasn't crossed the finishing line, but I think really you can't blame him. It was a very confusing run in there. There's a faster ball to the right, and there's a little flashback. And there is the result. Dufour ahead of Yekke. Fabien Yekke, Alexander Moussa, Tyler Hamilton, Sastre and Popovic. All of the riders in that chase group are placed, and some of them getting the same time. Still no name Perez here. Gerrit Glomser, Zuller coming in at 54 seconds. Zubeldia and Klaus Moeller, we didn't see him, but he was there, you see, in 11th place at the day. Mcgee, who was tailed off, was also in trouble. Now out there, Laurent Dufour then, a man who has won the Tour of Romandie before, and he's done enough now by my reckoning, and there you are, he has got the golden jersey, or leader's jersey. Alexander Moussa at 6 seconds now, Hamilton at 15, Yekke at 19. There will be an inquiry overnight, and we'll see what they're going to do about the hapless Francisco Perez, clearly off course, and they will have to make a decision there.
Well, yellow jersey now on the shoulders of Laurent Dufour, and he will try and consolidate that lead tomorrow on another very difficult mountain stage.
Well, thanks, Paul. And just before we do join stage 4 here, I can tell you that overnight Perez has been given the same time as the winner, Dufour, and also placed equal first. So although he did go off course, I think the judge is coming up with the right answer to that. So he's still very much in the hunt as we now move on to what they call the Queen stage, the toughest stage of this week of racing here in Switzerland. And whichever way you look at this event, it goes through some of the most beautiful country, I think, in the world. It races through the valleys, but not for very long, because we climb the first category mountain, the Col de Moses and the Col du Pillon, as we make our way towards the finish, which will come at Les Pacots from Montenay. 146 kilometers. There's the contours for you. It's a real up and a down route today, and really with the time trial tomorrow, the men who have visions of doing a good ride around Lausanne over 20 kilometers need to make an impression today.
They certainly do, and I think that final climb, Vallon de Villars, it's 990 meters of climbing, and that certainly is where the big decision will come. And it's not surprising that on this final day out on the open roads, there is already a breakaway. Tête de la course, you can see there, the breakaway, 1 minute and 21 seconds ahead of the main field. It is, in fact, the CSC team of Tyler Hamilton, once again, Phil, doing all of the pacemaking on the front. We must remember that despite the fact that Tyler has got that injured left hand, or wrist, I should say, he seems to be riding this race as a possible future winner. And in fact, I'm rather surprised to see Laurent Dufour's team not doing very much on the front.
Well, the pressure's on Dufour, of course, now. He's the man in the lead, and he's got to shake out his team, which may not be as strong as we suspect. But the other team, who really has lost nothing from the going off course yesterday of Perez, is the Milanese team, and they also have men in here. Steve Zampieri is the man who's made the move. As we look there at the moment, a chance to see Laurent Dufour as he comes towards the end of a very good career indeed, in which he's finished 4th in the Tour de France. He's now back in a race leader's jersey and on home soil. You can't do much better than that. He's looking pretty cool at the moment, riding on roads he knows very well. And the spring-like weather continuing here, as too are the attacks from the Milanese squad. This is Johan Horak from the team, Milanese, Portuguese team. 31 years, 31st, I beg your pardon, 31st overall he is at the moment, and the racing continued. Dario Cioni, another man that came to the sport from mountain biking. This is a good little breakaway going here.
I think Cioni has done very well since he moved across. He rode for the Mapei squad last year, and we saw him ride superbly in races like the Giro d'Italia, and he will be more than likely a member of Fassa Bortolo for the Giro d'Italia this year. Seems as if one or two of the top mountain bikers have decided to make the switch, and including, of course, Cadel Evans, who will be looking forward to riding the Tour de France with Team Telecom.
That'll be Phonax Steve Zampieri sitting near the back of this group. They've been on the attack since the gun today. We're getting towards the climbs now. The big peloton down there getting smaller by the day. Riders giving up, quite a few of them going out yesterday.
Well, it is a fairly small peloton considering how many riders started this event, but a lot of riders, I think, feel very worried by today's stage, which in the sport of professional cycling they call l'Etapa Reina, the queen of stages, because this is the race stage where everybody expects that the whole of the overall classification is going to be turned upside down. There's confirmation of the Tête de la Course, the head of the bike race, these 6 leaders: Cioni, Martinez, Bernabeu, who's been very aggressive, as well as Horac, Fertononi and Zampieri. But I have to say, considering, Phil, Milanese is a small team from Portugal, they've been very aggressive here at the Tour of Romandie, and people are saying there is a possibility that they might get a wildcard selection for the Tour de France.
Well, that would be amazing if they did. It would be a big surprise too, and I'm sure Mario Cipollini and his team, who aren't yet in the Tour, don't forget, will be pretty upset about that. This is Steve Zampieri here, 38 in the overall, now on the Vina Calderola team. 3:49 down, a chance to improve on that position right now. He's a very aggressive bike rider. Here's Horac from the Milanese squad. He's looking at 3:20 deficit at the moment, but these boys have got a plan, I think. MSS Perez having been given back, even though he went off course about a mile from the finish yesterday, given equal with the winner. I think it's absolutely right, that, because he would have won, and it was a very complicated approach to the line. He went the wrong way with all the cars, and as a result he's equal first on the stage. Whether that will show on his honours list in the years to come, I don't know. The remnants of the winter evidenced on the mountains there, but they're all on the way now. This is now spring here in Romandie, as the riders are on the climb of the Col or the Côte des Mosses. Or Caldermus.
Well, in fact, Phil, looking at the tactics here of Milanese, they've got a very good chance here of putting serious pressure on the main field this afternoon, and then they've got 3 men possibly who can take over towards the end. Jekke rode, I thought, very well yesterday, and of course Klaus Moeller is a man you can always count on, and then of course that great ride by Francisco Perez, I'm certain he would have won. They're now looking at the first category climb, the Col du Pilon. It goes up to 1,500 meters in altitude, and like many of these Swiss climbs, it's not really all that steep in its average. It's 5%. The length is just inside 7 kilometers, but I tell you what, it's the repetitive nature of the climbs on today's course which is going to make this a very difficult mountain stage.
Well, this climb of the Col du Pilon will take us through the 78-kilometer point of the day. It's 146.5 kilometers. Nice steady climb. The first rider over the top of the Col des Mous was David Bernabeu from Milanese, from Horrock, his teammates, dictating affairs at the moment. Zampieri third for Vina Calderola. And that breakaway more or less still intact, just a couple of kilometers from the top of the climb.
Well, at 75 kilometers to go, they're starting to pull back that leading group of 6. It was minute and 20 seconds a few moments ago. It's now coming down to just outside the 1 minute mark, and the teammates of Laurent Dufour have come to the front to pick up the pacemaking. Dufour wants to defend his overall lead when we come to the final climb of the day. Then he's going to have to defend it in a very difficult time trial tomorrow in the streets of Lausanne. The team, you can see though, are completely dedicated to Laurent Dufour, and they've got some really good men as we look here at the summit of the climb, and they've just charged through there in an unbelievable tempo.
They've even stopped the cable lift here so the occupants can have a look at the peloton passing underneath them here. As we go over the top of the first cat, there's still the Valley Viard to come, another first category climb before we have the climb up to the finish, which is only second. Little view of the rear of the peloton there. This is perfect conditions here, makes one quite enthusiastic for this time of the year. 1:29, 68 kilometers to go. They're still dictating affairs here. Over the top, by the way, the best rider over the top first was Martinez of the Euskadel team, Igor. Bernabeu second, and Horash third.
Great racing roads here in Switzerland, and many of these riders, I think, breathing a sigh of relief, because very often at this time of the year, you know, we have seen the Tour of Romandie run off in most abysmal conditions, rain and snow and wintry conditions. Today that certainly is not the case. This is a very spring-like afternoon, ideal for racing. The temperature around about 18 degrees Celsius, which is quite warm for the start of the season. You can get a chance to see just how fast these men are going down the descent right now. They're strung out into a very long line, but I think this is really just the hors d'oeuvre, Phil, because everybody is waiting for the final climb to see if there's going to be some kind of a showdown between the men at the top end of the overall classification. Tyler Hamilton looked pretty good yesterday, but I think he must be hampered in his climbing ability by that bandage he's got on his left wrist.
Yes, well, let's hope that it's not going to affect him. Tyler must surely realise if he can do a performance today and just hang on to the race leaders, then he could have a wonderful time trial tomorrow that might well bring him victory. You know, no Americans won this race since Andy Hampson. Hampson, in fact, the only American ever to have won this race as well. So that's a nice target for Tyler. A chance to break out of the shadow of his more famous countryman, Lance Armstrong, in a race which is considered by many to be well worth winning, the Tour of Romandie. It's an all-category race, which means it's amongst the best races in the world. Everybody, I've never actually worked daily on this race as we have in the Tour de France, and everybody who follows this race on the highways say it's one of the best organised races in the world.
It's a very good race. It's been on the calendar since just after the war, and everyone reckons that it is one of the best races to start off this part of the season, which we regard as the Grand Classic part, the Grand Tour part of the season. 67 kilometers to go, and you know, a few moments ago I thought they were going to pull back that breakaway because it came down to the 1 minute mark, but it is starting to stretch out once again. But to come back to what you were saying, Phil, yes, I think Tyler Hamilton for the moment has got a very good chance of winning this bike race. I mean, he started the day in 4th in the overall classification, a mere 15 seconds off, and we do know he's got a great time trialing ability.
I'd be very happy with that. Okay, Alexander Moussa, not a bad time trialist, but he's not in the class, I don't think, of Hamilton. Perez is just in front, and Dufour, the leader. Well, Dufour is a good climber, and so too we know now is Perez. So Hamilton is going to have to work out if he can go with them when the big decision has to be made shortly, or if he loses many more seconds, then he won't pull it back in what is a comparatively short time trial, just over 20 kilometres, about 12.5 miles tomorrow. So he will want not to lose much more than he is already behind overall.
Well, looking here at the 6 leaders, just going through the small town of Les Diablerets, which actually means the little devils, and that's probably what the main field thinks about this leading group of 6 right now, because these little devils have escaped the main field. They put an awful lot of pressure on because of the fact there are 2 Milanese riders in this group. The main field cannot give them any freedom. The overall race at the Tour of Romandie is going to be decided here this afternoon, although it goes down to a final time trial tomorrow. They dare not let a break of 5 or 6 riders get 4 or 5 minutes in front.
Racing through the valley here, the Vineyards Valley. Peloton speeding downhill, trying to work out what they're going to do about this breakaway. They've got it managed at the moment. It's nicely under control. We're also hearing strings of riders are climbing off. The majority of the sprinters with the time trial tomorrow have seemed to have called it a day, because the list is ever growing at the moment. Jan Zverada has gone, Bernard Eisel has abandoned, and Bradley Wiggins has also abandoned, the British rider, and so too Bradley Mcgee. So they've all decided that they've had enough of Romandie, nothing left in this event for them.
Well, great town names we're going through this afternoon. Vers l'église, which means on the way to the church. So I wonder if any of these guys are about to get married. But coming back to the point about the sprinters, Phil, on a day like today and with the time trial tomorrow, the sprinters actually have nothing left in this race, because they're not going to get up the final first category climb of the day. Many of them will have stayed in at the start of the race to help their teammates and team leaders who've got a great chance of winning this race overall. But once they've seen that they don't have any chance of winning a stage, they might as well take the back door and head home, because there are so many races left on the calendar for the sprinters. It's not really worth dragging a 95-kilo body up some of these big tough climbs.
Yeah, well, I know that Bradley Wiggins, the British rider, is hoping to make the call for the team in the Giro d'Italia, so he needs a few days to recover from this event and get himself ready for the Giro. Not too sure about Bradley Mcgee. I would have expected Bradley to have a real crack at the Tour de France this year, well pursued champion. But this is the field now, very workmanlike, isn't it? There's plenty of atmosphere. The Alessio boys keeping control at the pace at the front, all of the teams. Angelo Furlan, by the way, who's on their team, he's also abandoned, and so they've lost their sprinter. Not that that matters too much now, I suppose.
I tell you what, this is a very magnificent part of Europe, and a clear blue sky here this afternoon, making this a great bike race to look at. We're now 62 kilometres to go, and it's around about 1.5 minutes still the advantage of the 6 leaders, but we're now in between the 2 big mountains, so they've got a chance to recuperate, but they still have to keep the pressure on at the front end of this main peloton with all of the big favourites, the men who finished right up there yesterday. Dufour is in that pack, so is Moussa, so of course is Francisco Perez, and the fact that they gave him his time back yesterday that he lost, he actually holds on to 3rd place in the overall classification. He's 1 second ahead of Tyler Hamilton, and I never actually saw him coming into the finishing line yesterday, and I wonder how long it took to grab him and stop him.
No idea where he went. He was round amongst the dustbins, I think, round the back of the local hotel, because such was the tortuous situation up there. When we get over the top of the Vallon-Villard climb, we're just about 21 kilometres from the finish, which is at the top of the final climb of the day, which will take us up to the line. 2nd hilltop finish of the Tour. And I think if the riders who have looked at the route today, they're going to probably plan their attack probably on the climb towards the top of the Villard, and then see if they can hang on to the finish, because it's only a 12-mile race from the top of the final first cat to the top of the second cat, which brings us up to the finish. The peloton still working pretty hard here, lots of help, obviously confidence growing on CSC. They believe if they can hold this race together, Hamilton will handle it in the time trial.
But you notice sitting at the back of that line of 5 or 6 riders, there's a lot of lime green jerseys. That's the team of Milanese. They've got their great climber Fabian Jecker, the revelation of yesterday, Francisco Perez. All those guys have got to do right now is just sit at the back and allow the 2 big teams at the front to do all of the pacemaking, and that puts them under an awful lot of pressure, because they have to work very hard until we get to the final climb. Once we hit that climb, you'll see all of these team workers disappear from the main field, and it'll be left up to the the leaders of the actual classifications. But I think you see that's going to tilt the advantage towards Milanese, because right now their top men are just sitting in the main field not doing anything at all.
Well, there's the result over the top of the Col de Pion. A little bit late, I must say, but Martinez ahead of Bernardo, Orash, Cioni and Zampieri. Again, all of the riders in this leading group that's never really escaped the clutches of that hard racing peloton. Cioni wants a word with the boss. Hand up there. As the Phonak rider here will be Zampieri. Not Zampieri, the Phonak rider. At the back will be Alexander Marco Fertinani. Sorry, he's a new name for me, that boy.
Yeah, he's a young rider who has come across to the Phonak team in the last couple of months. But looking at that breakaway, Phil, it seems as if they're losing their impetus just a bit. Let's not forget, this is a very difficult route today. It's the queen of stages, as we said earlier. 3 very big climbs, and I wonder if 1 or 2 of the riders in that leading group of 6 right now are not quite so keen to take any passengers along this valley road, because there's about 25-30 kilometers in between the 2 climbs, and they're wasting an awful lot of energy just to hold on to not much more than a 1 minute's advantage.
Boy, this peloton is absolutely streaking along the road right now. Absolutely idyllic, beautiful, scenic route it is as well. This has to be the way to show off your nation to the world, is to put a bike race through it, because these riders penetrate into the heartland of the countryside. Up with the leaders again now, still plenty of work being done. Little chat going on here. David Bernabeu, just on the green Milanese squad there, has had a wonderful Tour of Romandie. He was in the action again yesterday, crossing on well, he's probably a little bit of a viaduct over the reservoirs here.
Well, actually, he really came to notice at the start of this season when he won the 7th stage of Paris-Nice, and he finished well up there in the overall classification. He finished 6th overall, but he is a man today working for the team. His team leaders this afternoon are Yecker, Moeller, and of course Francisco Perez, who should certainly have been the winner on yesterday's stage, but went off course, and it was around about 1.5 kilometers before the end, and he still had a good 15-second advantage.
Steve Zampieri here on the front, working hard. And Zampieri, one of the boys who's had an up and a down season. He's 26 years of age now, and came over from Post Swiss. Hasn't won a lot of races, only won 8. One place this not very long ago, a week or so ago, he finished 3rd in the Settimana Lombarda race in Italy.
Tell you what, if you want to see a few engineering feats, Switzerland is definitely the place to come, because they have linked a lot of these valleys with incredible viaducts right the way across the top. We're now at the front end of the main field, and still those 6 leaders are holding on to a 67-second advantage, and there's no change at all at the front of the peloton. It's Alessio and CSC, so I think we have a fair idea which 2 men are looking to win the Tour of Romandie here. It's Tyler Hamilton, of course, Laurent Dufour. Dufour leads Hamilton at the moment in the overall classification by 15 seconds, and I think he'll have a hard time actually holding on to that 15 seconds against Tyler Hamilton in a time trial which is around about 20 kilometers in length.
Well, Dufour is a classy little bike rider. I can't believe he really had the confidence that he thought he was going to win this race, but he's got himself into the leader's jersey, and now he must think of that possibility, because last year he finished 4th in the Tour of Switzerland. He seems to excel on home soil. The last time he won this race, though, was back in 1998. He also got 3rd in this event in the year 2000 when he picked up a stage. He's a very regular performer.
And the year after that, though, he finished 4th overall in the Tour de France, which indicates that he is a very good stage race rider. He's one of those riders who's always promised big things, a bit like Alex Zuller. He never has actually made the grade, but he's always been around in the top 10 placings in the big stage races, and he'll be looking this year to put in a solid performance when he goes through to the Tour de France, Tour of Italy, I should say, in about a week or 10 days' time.
Nice little switch back for the riders here, continue to speed away under the escort of CSC. There's no doubt that CSC have got the better of the teams here from Alessio, and they've put all of the men up the front, very wisely so, although basically there's nobody up front yet who is going to threaten the overall lead. I think the idea is more to keep this pace high and try and stop any counter-attack getting off the front until they get to the slopes of the VR, and we're not too far away from that climb now. And once over the top, we've just got that 20-kilometer ride to the finish via the finishing climb. There's a lot of riders in that peloton still, but there's an awful lot not contributing now to the chase.
I tell you what, this is certainly not a comfortable place to be right now. When you see the main field stretched out like that, you can actually almost see the gap starting to appear between the wheels of all of the riders in that big long line. The two big teams here at the Tour of Romandie, team of Tyler Hamilton CSC and the team of Alessio of Laurent Dufour, have decided right now to put the hammer down. I think they want to pull those six back as quickly as possible before we get to the early slopes of the final climb of the day, where we will see an unbelievable showdown, I would expect.
It's all or nothing today, otherwise tomorrow it's the time trialists to the fore. These men have been in charge of this race almost from the start, and I think it's been again another plan here by the MSS team, Milanezzi team, because they were on the tack yesterday, almost got the win until Perez went off course, but they've got two riders in this breakaway. They should be able to dictate as long as possible. Igor Martinez is the young rider in the orange jersey for Euskaltel. This is Steve Zampieri. There doesn't seem to be too many passengers here. Horash, pretty accomplished bike rider here, Johan Horash. And you know, just over 3 minutes down, if they did let go of this breakaway, then one or two guys would really fancy their chances of upsetting the leaderboard.
Well, a lot of teams in races like this hoping to shine and show the Tour de France organisers that they deserve a place in the big 3-week bike race in July. There's still a couple of places left in the wild card selection. As we look down on the main field, I tell you what, Phil, there are a lot of riders in difficulty at the back end of that small group now, because we really are beginning to reduce in numbers the riders left here in the Tour of Romandie, with one big mountain climb to come and then a final time trial tomorrow around the streets of Lausanne. And the teammates of Tyler Hamilton are doing an absolutely superb job, but you cannot take anything away from this leading group of 6, because despite the fact that the main field is literally splintering behind, these men are still surviving and they're still holding on to a fair part of their 1 minute's advantage.
Yes, you're right. I mean, we're giving the viewers here the feeling that this race is all downhill at the moment, because we're screaming across this valley road. They've got to really keep on their concentration, make as much of the easier route as they possibly can. Beautiful green countryside, excellent road surface. This is part of this immaculate country of Switzerland.
I think that's the important thing about racing in Switzerland. The roads are all superb. Even when you get up into the big mountain passes, they are completely looked after. Even though for many months during the winter they're covered in snow, they seem to be able to keep everything in spick and span condition, and everything works, I have to say, just like clockwork. Sitting on the back, the Phonite rider now, I think, has realised that these guys are probably going to get caught before we come to the final climb of the day. But check that out. That is an unbelievable view that we're looking at here in the very far of Switzerland. Later on in the season, the riders will come back and race one or two races through here in the Tour of Switzerland, which is the last big stage race before the Tour de France comes up in July.
Well, there's certainly no room for spectators on this route, as they're way out in the countryside. Zampieri stretching his back out there. 30 miles left to race. Slowly but surely they are being reeled in. We're inside a minute now, so the chase is working. 38 kilometers an hour, that is the actual average speed at the moment. 24 miles an hour, which is not a great average speed, but then a lot of this course has been uphill. They'll be improving on the average right now, of course. As we continue, we're not very far now from the start of the climb. We'll go over the top of that climb at 126 kilometers covered, so just over 20 kilometers to go to the finish. Now, what's going on here?
Journey's in a bit of bother here at the back of this group. There's been an acceleration at the front end, and I think it could be Martinez in the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi there that's put the hammer down just a little bit. In fact, no, it wasn't. It was Zampieri here. This is a move coming from Steve Zampieri. He's decided he wants to try and hot up affairs right now. And immediately you see the riders from Milanezzi, and I think that was Horace going straight after him to try and pull him back, and Martinez as well, very attentive.
Very attentive. We've got rid of one of the riders in the breakaway at least, and there goes Martinez again. Well, quite clearly now they sense as the gap has come inside the minute. If they don't liven this up, they will be caught before the climb, and they desperately want it to be clear until the climb here of the VR. It's a first category climb.
Well, they got the gap as well.
Half a minute though. They're coming back very quickly at 40 kilometers from the finish. So this is Horash now, and the very impressive Igor Martinez of Euskaltel. And that is quite a big gap now. Now what could happen here, you see, the peloton might sweep up the stragglers, and might take them a little while to twig on to the fact that two others have gone.
Well, that was a flurry of attacks started by Steve Zampieri, and I think probably because one or two of the riders were starting to miss turns at the back of the group, and the only way to succeed then is try and reduce the numbers in the group as quickly as possible. So these two riders now have got about a 20-second advantage over their former colleagues in the breakaway attempt. Martinez on the right-hand side, they're just going through the town of Stephen Roach.
Indeed, indeed. Another man that did well in the Tour of Romandie. The reason it seems, Paul, we're just hearing that Bernabeu rather, punctured as the attacks began. He was the sixth man of the break who disappeared off our screens. We haven't seen him, we never saw him get service, so he's gone back, and that's caused a reaction from those two riders. Here's the peloton, pinned over to the right of the road by the crosswind, but it's nothing significant today, as the Milanese sitting round. They're the leading team, by the way, and deservedly so at the moment, over Cofidis and CSC. There's the capture of Zampieri. So it looks like they're pulling back, all except the two leaders now.
Yeah, just on the far side, a quick glimpse of Dario Cioni. So he was back in the field. We're now looking at the two leaders having an advantage of about 30 seconds over this group, and you can see the team of Tyler Hamilton now, CSC, and the red and white jerseys on the front. They're taking a much keener interest in pulling this race back together. I think they want to get everything sorted out before they come to the start of the final climb, where we're going to have a big, serious showdown. All I would say Tyler Hamilton needs to do, Phil, is just to keep a very close eye on the other riders in the group with him, because as far as I'm concerned, he is the best time trialist of the lot when we come down to looking at the climbers at the top end of the overall classification. The two leaders, Martinez and Horac, on the left-hand side, they're still holding on a pretty good advantage there. It's 39 seconds back to the main field, and when you look at the pressure in the main field, it really makes you realise that the two escapees are doing a fine job.
Well, I think they've done a great job too, because they managed to open up the gap just a little bit at a time when they were coming back to the peloton, but the pressure gone off because they've picked up 4 of those 6 breakaways, and if they don't realise there's still 2 out, I'm sure they do by now, then they're going to have to rechange their plans. But they're waiting as long as they can. We're not far away from the stepping stones that take us up to the finishing line, and the peloton regrouping here, never as big as it was. Back to Horash up front with Martinez, Igor. Very impressive bike riders, these two today. And Horac is certainly a good bike rider too. He's done extremely well. He's a very solid bike rider. He's nearly 30 years of age now, Horac, but he had a win in the Grand Prix at Mitsubishi. Sorry, he finished 3rd in that race. It's a stage race, small stage race. That's his only win this year, but in the past he has had some good victories. He's finished 2nd in the Tour of Portugal and 2nd in the Tour of Asturias, and he's also won a race in Portugal, the Grand Prix General Noticias, which is a race very similar to the actual Tour of Portugal. So he's a little quite an accomplished bike rider, and he's been with this team for a long time now, MSS. Pretty sure he's never ridden for any other team throughout his career, which is now in his 4th season. Well, they're starting to turn away now from the lake, and then they're going to start the climb up towards the top of the Vallon Villard. Once we get there, 125 kilometers accomplished, the road gets narrow. This is when the goose flesh starts coming on your arms and you realise the climb is just ahead. Martinez and Horac, the two leaders, about 35-40 seconds.
I tell you what, looking at the main field there just at the start of this climb, there certainly weren't very many riders left in that group at all, so I can see not very many riders finishing the Tour of Romandie this year. Martinez riding very well there, setting a nice tempo, but it's impossible to work together now as a group on the slopes of a climb like this. It's just a question of doing slightly longer turns. It's much better to ride the tempo yourself to feel a lot more comfortable. This is Alessandro Bertolini at the back. He's a teammate of Laurent Dufour. He's just going back to take on board drinks, which he'll probably go and deposit with his team leader Laurent Dufour, who is in the yellow jersey. Chance to see a bit further up the pack. There's Rubens Bertoliati. Very good bike rider there. You can see a little bit further up the road. The road is certainly starting to tilt up towards the skies right now, and I wouldn't like to be at the back end of that group. Already a lot of riders being left behind, and a man in difficulty here is Dario Frigo, a former two-time winner of this bike race. Well, he's certainly not showing the form he had in April, Phil.
Defending champion there. He didn't look at all as though he was about to relish this climb. And he's got tremendous form until now. Maybe this is unfortunate for him, but maybe this is going to be his down week, because 6 wins under his belt already this year. He was the #1 man to beat, there's no doubt about that, but he's cracked. Now what's going on here? Because this looks like Horich and the peloton has closed right up.
This, in fact, I think there's a counter-attack coming across from Milanese here, because they've been on the attack all day. And looking back, it looks as if, in fact, one of the riders who was up there, Horach, has been caught and passed by one of his teammates, and it's hard to see. He looks completely anonymous there with his helmet and glasses on, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't somebody like Fabian Jecker having a go.
Well, it looks like Jecker, but I need him to sit down because he's not that big a guy. Thank you very much. As this is amazing, because we didn't actually see that catch there. Our camera suddenly switching to the front. We had no idea that they closed in quite as rapidly as that, but we're pretty certain that they've been swept up. And if so, that is why Milanese, trying the old tactics they tried yesterday, have now launched 2 more riders on the attack, and Euskaltel look ready now to take up the chase.
Well, in fact, this looks like Perez who's going off the frontier right now, Phil.
Well, they're saying Horach is still here, but this is either that or Horach has come back and gone again with Perez. This is certainly the man that went off course yesterday, Francisco Perez. Well, it would be incredible if he won today and made up for yesterday, wouldn't it?
Well, there's a complete and utter change around right now. Very well set up by Milanese, the team from Portugal. I think for a few moments he was probably with his teammate just at the moment when they were about to make the junction, but he hasn't got very much advantage over the main field right now, Phil, because there's about 25 riders, something like 15 seconds behind him. Well, this is Horach. No, in fact, what's happening right now is, in fact, yesterday's winner is a lot further up the road. This is Horach about to get caught by the rest of the group. Yeah,
they've caught Martinez. That was what caused the confusion. The same colours of Milanese, but the Euskaltel was Martinez going back. Horach was left up front. Perez has come up to him, gone straight by him, and now is the big chance here to make full amends for yesterday. Well, this is quite amazing, really. Perez, given equal first in the end yesterday, has now got himself back into the driving seat once again. Excellent teamwork by MSS and a serious attack here.
Well, I tell you what, this is a very brave move by this man, because let's not forget, Phil, the race doesn't finish at the top of the climb as it did yesterday. There's still around about 20 kilometers once he gets over the summit. But that is a great setup by Milanese. You know, they have done a superb job to toughen up this race by having 2 men in that breakaway so early on.
Well, they've got the team lead which he deserved in this race, just over a minute from Cofidis just now. As now we've got this one rider trying to break clear. Now, had he won yesterday with the time gap he had, he would have been the race leader on the road today in the yellow jersey. And I don't think he would have been allowed a move like this then.
No, he would have ridden completely differently. In fact, he's got help coming across here as well. It looks as if it's one of his teammates too trying to make the junction. You know, they have ridden a great race this afternoon. They put pressure on the other teams. In fact, this looks like Klaus Moeller. He's the man who in the big stage race is probably the leader of this team. But right now, these 2 men are going to try and work together and build up on the advantage over riders like Dufour and Hamilton.
Well, Moeller won the Tour of the Algarve in Portugal in March, and he is a very, very good bike rider indeed. Some 19 wins to his credit in a good career. He's come across to Perez. He knows the strength of Perez, and this is a big effort by Moeller now to work with him. Now, obviously the teams behind couldn't control MSS because they were certainly all in the mix at the time. They wiped out the leaders and they were unable to go with this early attack. We're now in Saint-Zier and we're making our way to the top of the first category climb, which puts us 20 kilometers from the finish.
Well, they've got a massive gap already. They're around about 25 seconds in not very much more than 1 kilometer. Perez sitting in second position right now. He's going to use his teammate as much as possible. That's a smaller rider on the front there is Moeller, and again another move coming across the front, and again it looks like the lime green jerseys are Milanese. This is Fabian Jekke.
Well, this is amazing, but this time there's a reaction from CSC, and I think that they can't take any more attacks, and the boys in lime green here, they're going to have to make a move here. I'm not sure if that's Tyler Hamilton who's tried. It doesn't look like Tyler Hamilton who's come across the gap here.
Well, no, Hamilton's got a bandage on his left arm, so that's one of Hamilton's teammates just nailing back Fabian Jekke, but they've done nothing to the advantage of these two men. On the front there is Francisco Perez, definitely a huge revelation of this season. In fact, he had a win earlier on in the year. I think it was in the Grand Prix Mitsubishi.
Yeah, that's right, it was. Well, it could be Carlos Sastre who's come across there with CSC, the little man. 17 seconds back to the peloton, still chance to put matters to right, but we're on the climb now. Superb riding by MSS, clearly not frightened by the other talent in this event. The one man we haven't seen anything of in these attacks, and it's crucial now, is the race leader, Laurent Dufour. The Milanese tandem heading up now, 25 kilometers board there to go, which puts us 5 kilometers from the top of this climb, and they are getting on with the job here. This is a serious attack. They must open the gaps today if they're going to win this race tomorrow.
Well, these two guys realise that if they're going to beat Tyler Hamilton in the time trial tomorrow, they really do need to get themselves a big buffer before that final closing stage here at the Tour of Romandie. But look at the pressure that attack has put on what was a few moments ago a 25 or 30 man group. They are all over the place at the moment. That looks like Tyler Hamilton bombing his way through here right now. He's just going straight by Klaus Moeller. Well, that's amazing because Moeller must have been caught.
There's
Jekke
right
in
back.
front.
He has, because you can still see in the front there is the leader, Perez, but Moeller giving what help he could and has now fallen back. Alexander Moussa is here, champion of Switzerland, working very hard. Tyler Hamilton, it is Carlos Sastre who's tagged on to the back.
Yep, there's another group just in front though, and I think Hamilton has got across to that group just in front. That group is starting to form, and that may well could be where Tyler Hamilton has gone to, and this race is completely changing as we look at it.
Now, because of the way the race is splitting here, we're going to have a little problem getting amongst it just for the moment. Let's see now. There is Tyler Hamilton now, feeling he might be getting a little bit of control of his race, knowing he's only got to hang on to these boys to ride out the winner in the time trial tomorrow if he turns in his usual event. Now, Perez has been nailed back here by Hamilton. That very upright position, the one of concentration, just gets on with the pedaling action. This is Moussa, champion of Switzerland. Jekke is still here. Oh, there's all the names for you. And Klaus Moeller tagged on to the back.
But look at this, Phil. This situation right now, there are 5 riders leading this bike race, and 3 of them are from the same team, the Milanese team. They can play an unbelievable tactical hand when they get over the summit of this climb. Hamilton, yes, he does have to just ride to defend because he is the best time trialist from the group. It's amazing to see the season that this young man has had this year, because after winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he becomes really one of the greats. A remarkable win there, because on several occasions during Liège-Bastogne-Liège, we saw him get blown away, but he never gave up. He always fought back, and at the end, when it came to that very difficult climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, he actually managed to go away on his own. This is Dufour now, the leader of the bike race, dragging himself back up into contention, but being an older rider, he was put into difficulty on the first attacks of the climb, but he will recover.
He has recovered. Gerrit Gloms are trying to cross the gap there with him. Seiko, and a little bit of help coming back there too for him, and I think that'll be Andrea Noe, who's looking where he is, dropping off the tail. Popovic. This is a very interesting little group, but suddenly Robert Leisecker is there as well, as the Cofidis boys also fighting their way back into the picture. They are second in the team race, outnumbered a little bit. David Moncoutier setting the pace here now.
Well, they've got to do something special to try and pull back this leading group of 5 riders. Sitting right in the middle there of the Milanese sandwich is Tyler Hamilton. Francisco Perez on the front is just out of the saddle, giving everything he can. He obviously wants revenge for what happened yesterday, because, you know, he was almost certainly going to be the winner of the stage. But there's nothing like crossing the line in first place and being able to throw your arms in the air in victory. And I think that's a sensation he unfortunately missed out on.
5 riders climbing towards the blue, slowly building over that chase group, containing now the maillot jaune. Laurent Dufour, far from out of it just yet, but Dufour has made a huge mistake in allowing Hamilton his head. 2 riders in the top 4 are clear. 3 riders in the top 4 are clear. I completely forgot about Alexander Moussa in the red jersey there, as champion of Switzerland. I keep mistaking him for the riders on the Seiko squad. But these 3 riders here on the top 4, the only man who's missed the move is Laurent Dufour.
Well, I think it was just the violence of the attack at this early part of the climb. As I said, when you're a slightly older rider, you're not able to accelerate quite as quickly as some of the younger riders in the event. And what has happened with Dufour, he was put under pressure, but he won't panic. He's ridden himself back in his quarter group, which is just behind this group on the road, and he's got a chance of getting himself organised, because after all, the finish is not at the top of the climb. There's still over 20 kilometres to go, and it's a very difficult undulating 20 kilometres too.
It certainly is, culminating with the climb to the line for the 2nd day in succession, and Perez for the 2nd day in succession is in the mix coming into the kill. Over the top of the valley climb, Sastre, Martinez, this is Alberto Martinez there, and Mazzolini.
Well, they're actually not very far behind. I put it around about 15 seconds behind the 5 leaders. These guys have got a very good chance of getting up to the front, but still no sign of the overall leader, Laurent Dufour, who's with, at the moment, the 3rd group on the road. Now, if these 3 are able to catch their leading 5, we've got a serious working group, and they should then be able to survive to the finish, because I have a feeling a lot of the teammates of Laurent Dufour have disappeared from the race. He only has Andrea Noé with him.
Noé is the only man he ever seems to have with him, and he gets to the mountain stages of the Tour. But you know that Sastre there is a passenger sitting at the back. There is the peloton yellow jersey group of Laurent Dufour as they now go over the top of the climb. There's a lot of work to be done here, and I'm not so sure that Dufour is going to find the men around him, because they've allowed the real danger men of the Giro to break away here.
Well, around the corner, there's a problem here. This is Moeller. This is Moeller, Phil, who seems to have had a problem at the back of the group, and I'm not sure exactly what happened to him there. He's looking round. He knows the group's going to come up to him quite quickly, but he's lost contact with that leading group. I didn't see at all what happened. He may well have just dropped his chain, but the group of 5 that he was with are now around the corner. Very shortly, I think he'll get picked up by the 3 men, including Zampieri and Eddie Mazzolini, I should say.
There's the main field down there. The gap's now beginning to open. Back up here now with the leaders without one man. We've just seen him drop off. Hamilton, Yeke, Perez and Moussa. These are the riders who could be writing themselves into the top places in the overall classification, and there'd still be a showdown in the time trial tomorrow, because you'd be able to throw a blanket over the leadership of this race unless anybody steals a march near the end. And I'm not sure they can on this 2nd category climb. It's not the hardest climb of the day either.
Well, you see Tyler Hamilton, he's riding pretty much a defensive role right now. He does not need to go onto the attack, because he knows as long as he doesn't lose any time here this afternoon on this stage, he's got a very good chance of winning this bike race overall. Look at him there, looking over his shoulder. He's trying to ascertain just exactly what is happening in the bike race behind. And there's 2 guys coming across there, 3 guys. I think that's going to be Eddie Mazzolini in that group, because he was a member of that 3-man group, but I've no idea where Klaus Moeller is right now.
Well, I wonder if that Sastre have been dropped. I'm surprised if it is, because he was doing nothing in that chase group of 3, and he knows that Tyler Hamilton could do with his help once he gets across, but we'll know soon enough when we get down there and check it out. But still no signs of Laurent Dufour. He's got one more shot to reach them on the last climb. It's going to be a big decision, I think. Well,
this is Alberto Martinez, and I should think that in that case we will see that Carlos Sastre is just in front of the car there with Eddie Mazzolini.
Right.
And there you can see the junction, but it's not a red jersey at all.
Now we've got 6 riders down there now. 2 have bridged. Martinez hasn't, so we must presume that Sastre is up alongside Tyler Hamilton now to give him a hand.
Well, they'll get themselves organised right now. Martinez will have a very difficult time catching these boys if he doesn't hurry up and pick up the pacemaking. He's just behind that yellow vehicle. This is Eddie Mazzolini at the back in the yellow jersey. He's a man we've seen ride very well in stage races like the Giro and, of course, the Tour of France. And there is confirmation that through all of that confusion, Carlos Sastre did manage to make the junction. So these are the names of the 6 leaders. But the men who've been doing the majority of the pacemaking are Francisco Perez and, of course, Fabian Yecker.
Mazzolini had a reasonably successful World Cup series in the springtime, 10th in the Flèche Wallonne and 9th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Ardennais weekend there. And it looks as though Martinez making a bit of a meal of this, but he might get across. Not quite got the twitch fibres of the others. He got unshipped somewhere along the road.
There you can see the group there containing the yellow jersey. I would think looking down there, 2, 4, 6. No, that's the leading group, and there's Martinez just behind him. So the yellow jersey group is hovering at around about 40 seconds right now, and they need to get themselves organised. And this is a fairly steep part of the course. This is Sastre at the back, and in fact he's having a bit of a problem staying in contact with this group, and he has to get very much out of the saddle. These are the narrow roads that string across the sides of these valleys through the meadows. It's not one of the big motorway climbs that we've seen so far, and a lot of these riders are being put under a bit of pressure.
Huge enthusiasm from the youngsters on the left of the road, as they're seeing now what might well prove to be the decisive move in this year's Tour of Romandie. Although, having said that, somebody else has decided it's a chance to have another go. Now, this is a switch back to the second group, because we're looking at Laurent Dufour trying to get off the front here. One final swan song from Laurent Dufour. He knows he must reach that group. All of the danger men around him are there. He should never have let them out of his sight. He's now got to put it to rights.
She's a tough bike rider. He doesn't want to give up. He wants to win the Tour of Romandie for a second time. He won it back in 1998, I think, and he's realising now this is a great chance. The advantage he has of being a local rider is he will know these climbs and the length of the climbs, and it's a good thing to have in the back of your mind, because you can actually judge your effort to absolute perfection.
Well, clearly it's showdown time right now. Everybody fighting for themselves at 16 kilometers to go to the finishing line, just 10 miles. The gap's 24 seconds across.
That's not very much at all, and with 1 or 2 of these slight descents, it gives Dufour a very good chance to pull himself back. This is sitting on the back here, Eddie Mazzolini. Mazzolini's a great bike rider, 15th overall in the Tour of Italy last year. And that, in fact, was done while he was working for one of his teammates. These guys, they seem to have lost a bit of impetus right now. That's Yecker, 3 from the back. Francisco Perez is moving to the front, but Tyler Hamilton seems to have recovered somewhat. I think he's trying to set the tempo on the front of this group, really just to try and nullify any attacks. But Dufour is closing in on them right now, because it's down to 21 seconds to the yellow jersey group.
Now, it'd be like to know now just how Laurent Dufour is getting on there, having seen him make his move. These are the leaders here. Mazzolini, since he came across, has not shown too much interest, but we're back with Laurent Dufour now. And he's driving the train, a little bit of a scrabble behind. He's got some strong help on his way, but look at this now. He, like all good race leaders, looking for no one when the chips are down. He's trying to put the matters to right. Determined look there on Dufour's face. And I think the rider from Milanese who just got on there is Delomo, I think it was. They've used just about everyone of their team today, MSS.
Everyone has done a great job to try and set this up here this afternoon. They've got 2 men in the leading group of 6, but I tell you what, when you are the race leader, you don't ask for any help. You are not looking for help from any other team. You have to do it all on your own. And there you can see the group of Laurent Dufour. He is pulling himself back into leadership in the Tour of Romandie here right now. This is quite a remarkable performance. In fact, I think that is Klaus Moeller there, who's on the wheel of Laurent Dufour, but he is getting a bit of help, possibly from a former teammate.
Well, that would make more sense, I must say. Popovic is also coming across here. Looks as though Martinez has been collected. trying now to reach the leaders. 15 seconds the gap. The race looks as though it might even be repairing itself right now.
Well, there's a bigger group coming across as well there, and I think it is possibly all going to come back together at the end, which is really quite remarkable. We expected a big showdown here, but it may well have to go down to the final individual time trial tomorrow, about 20 kilometers around Lausanne, and that will be the decider. And I tell you what, Tyler Hamilton now, as we get closer to the finish, with hardly any serious change in the overall classification, must be beginning to feel like a very confident man. It's a 7% decline here. You can see we're pushing speeds of pretty close to 75 kilometers an hour right now, and ooh, that hurts, you know, when you go from blinding sunshine into the shadows.
As we enter the shadows, 15 kilometers on the board, 9 miles to the finish, just across this valley and up into the towns. It's a slight uphill climb as well. It's the second consecutive uphill finish. As we come over the top in the helicopter, hoping that we'll find the riders somewhere on the other side. Here we are on the way down. Still Mazzolini sitting at the back collecting the tickets. MSS with 2 men here and 1 on the way. Well, they've had a good team. They're going to increase their team lead today if they keep this up.
Well, it's down to 12 seconds right now. I was just going to say, Mazzolini doesn't have to worry about trying to help for the success of the breakaway. He can see the race contenders actually battling it out here. There's a big battle going between the 2 men from Milanese and, of course, Tyler Hamilton. Mazzolini's just going to sit there, and I would think if they don't get caught, we can expect a move to come from Mazzolini down towards the end. He's sitting there, as he has been for the last 4 or 5 kilometers, in 6th position. He's quite happy just to sit there. He will wait until we get to a flatter part of the course, and don't be surprised if you see him really hit them hard and try and get clear.
At the end of the day, the strong men will out, and it looks like that's the way it's going to be in this year's Tour of Romandie. Just Dufour trying to repair the damage, and once he gets across, then all of the men who've dictated the overall classification will be back together again. And whereas we expected to see the winner today take this race out overall, it could well go down now to the last time trial tomorrow, albeit only 20 kilometers, and then surely it'll favour Tyler Hamilton. He is such a good time trial rider.
Well, looking out here over the views around the finishing area, there's a bit of confusion with the television coverage right now because of the fact we are in the trees. It's so difficult to bring up the pictures from the motorbikes. We're inside of 14 kilometers to go right now, and back with the 6-man leading group. Mazzolini still sitting at the back of the group here right now. I would think Tyler Hamilton is the man on the front setting the tempo. In 5th position there is Fabian Jecker. Moussa is in front too. Moussa, I think, has ridden very well in this year's Tour of Romandie, Phil. He's always been there, always been consistent, and he too is a very good individual time trialist. Here's Laurent Dufour.
Whoa, just as they swung right here, as I think they start the stepping stones up towards the finish, Dufour has led the train up, and they are coming onto the tail. Well, a desperate race indeed, and he's got Gerrit Glomser, the winner of the Tour of Austria last year, also linking up with Popovic as well. And so I guess the other one must be Martinez, who's come onto the back here.
It's Hamilton just going off the front, and now these guys need to nail him back pretty quickly right now. That's Popovic on the back in the red shorts with a blue strip down the side. He's a very big star of the future, this man. I expect to see him ride well in the Giro d'Italia shortly. On the far side, Dufour did a great job to come back together, and I think Tyler Hamilton, Phil, when he looks over his shoulders and sees such a large group behind him, he'll probably sit up and wait for them to rejoin.
Well, that is a very classy breakaway now. It took a while to bring it all together, but the Maillot Jaune has got himself back into the driving seat. 0 time for him. He's going to have to watch now, though, when the final attacks come. And it looks like this is an attack from Mazzolini.
This is Mazzolini. He was sitting on the back of that group. He's waited for the junction to happen, and I think as soon as it did, there's always a natural slowing down in a group like that. He felt that slowing down, and he's hit them hard. There's no real reason to chase down Mazzolini that hard. He's not a serious threat in the overall classification, but we do need to get ourselves organised if the men at the back want to try and win the stage here this afternoon.
So Mazzolini going for gold now, and at least just the stage win, if nothing else, and it would be a great result for him as he moves clear. Now, will there be a reaction? Because I think very often the riders will want to take the pressure off themselves and distract the riders to look at somebody else and maybe look for their chance. Somebody, I don't think we'll see any attacks at the moment coming from CSC's Tyler Hamilton. What would be the point of that when he knows he can ride these guys out in the time trial tomorrow? But He's going to certainly watch any counter moves coming now.
Difficult to get in there and follow the bike riders through here, but one thing we do know is at the Tête de la Course, the head of the bike race, we are looking at Eddie Mazzolini. He's a very consistent bike rider, not one of the great winners of the sport, but a tough man capable of riding high in the overall classification in races like the Giro d'Italia, and of course he's ridden the Tour de France on a number of occasions, and he right now is trying to get himself a single victory here on the 4th stage of the Tour of Romandie. His advantage 15 seconds over a very large group, the group there containing the big contenders for the overall win. Francisco Perez, who's pretty high in the overall classification, but my favourite, Phil, has to be still at this stage Tyler Hamilton.
He's doing exactly what he has to do right now, and that's hold this race together. Mazzolini some minutes behind overall. They can afford to let him run for a moment at least. Here he is now, having made his move, nicely so. He'll be 29 years of age in July this year.
A couple of years ago he got a stage win in the Tour of Switzerland, but ever since then he's been a rider more interested in trying to ride high in the overall classification of races like the Giro d'Italia. He's really digging deep right now, and all he has to do is just concentrate, because I can't see that they've got any reason to chase this man down. And behind him, in fact, it looks like this is Alexander Moussa who's decided he's going to try and launch a counter-attack.
Well, this will be serious.
6 seconds down in the overall classification. This is a move that they cannot let go clear.
They've got to react to this one, because if Moussa gets away, then he's put himself in an extremely strong position, because he can ride a pretty solid time trial. It's only 20 kilometers, remember, tomorrow. So this has got to cause a reaction both from Dufour and indeed from Perez, and also, of course, from Tyler Hamilton. Good move by Moussa. Remember, he came across in the group.
The Swiss national champion, he's looking over his shoulder. I think he's looking to see if there's any reaction, because it's still a long, hard ride on your own. It's a sign of not complete confidence when you see a rider looking back over his shoulders, and there's been a serious reaction right now. And look at that, Phil. The gaps between the wheels of all of those riders in this group indicate just how hard the pressure is on, and they've brought back Moussa, and it looks as if there's another counter-attack moving off the front.
Looks like Milanese have sent the boys up to the front there as they make the left-hand turn. Remember, still got Eddie Mazzolini in front. He's only won 2 races in his life, Eddie, and they both came in the year 2000. One was a stage of the Tour of Romandie, and it was the morning of the afternoon time trial when he won that. And there goes an attack, and it's the MSS who's gone again this time.
Looks like the lime green jersey.
It looks like, is that Perez?
It looks like the style of Perez. Eddie Mazzolini getting rid of the helmet now, the hat I should say. He wants to get as light as possible. He's not worried about the battling that's going on behind him. He's worrying more about trying to win himself the stage. We're 6 kilometers to go right now. Mazzolini is still holding on to a 20-second advantage, but that actually is Perez who's gone off, and he's caught in between the two.
Well, he's taking a big gamble here. The road is going to kick up a little bit harder than currently. The rider's more or less on false flat here, riding on heavy gears. But Francisco Perez is off the front, dangling temptingly like a carrot in front of the proverbial donkey. And this is the man that they all want, Eddie Mazzolini. 19 seconds will be the gap to the actual pack. In between, though, now we've got Perez trying to wipe out the memories perhaps of yesterday. But he's already been attacking in the earlier hills. If he's still got some good legs, then he's looking like a very good bike rider in the making here. Well, this is unimportant, but it is a sprint at Châtel. Mazzolini takes it. No sprint, of course.
And there you can see that's just Perez just hanging off in front, and around the corner is Eddie Mazzolini. What I did notice, Phil, in the group behind, Laurent Dufour is doing nothing at all now to help in the pace-making and the chase behind Perez. I think he's having a bit of a hard time right now, but he's done what he needs to do. He should be able to keep hold of the yellow jersey here this afternoon as we go through that sprint point where just a few moments ago Eddie Mazzolini was first man on the road. That was Dufour at the back in the yellow. And just trying to see through the shadows here who is doing the majority of the pace. In fact, they're all sitting up right now.
Well, that's not a good sign. It's a good sign for Eddie Mazzolini, and it's a good sign for Perez. But that's about it. Now, I don't know whether they disregard Perez as a danger, but they can't afford. Seconds could well decide this Tour of Romandie, and they can't allow Perez race away now to the finish. Châtel Saint-Denis is where the riders fought out that sprint.
Well, They can't afford to let him go that much off the front, and they realise that. You see, they're starting to get organised once again. They're stretching themselves out, but we're now looking at not much further than 5 kilometres to go to the finish. That's around about 7.5 minutes of racing at speeds like this. The shadows are starting to lengthen in the late afternoon here. Mazzolini's not too worried about that. All he's worried about is keeping the pressure on. He's a very strong bike rider. I remember him riding in the Tour de France when he used to ride for the Seiko team, but ever since then he's moved around trying to find a place for himself as a GC rider. 15th overall in the Tour of Italy last year, and he cannot spend any time at all right now thinking about what's going on behind. He can only hope as we get closer to the finish that there is a marking between riders like Dufour and Perez and of course Tyler Hamilton.
And there's that sprint result. Perez chasing, Hamilton sweeping up. Interestingly, Hamilton takes a 1 second time bonus there, which might well prove the difference if this race comes down to tomorrow's time trial. Perez, interestingly enough, gets 2 seconds. There is the Maillot Jaune group, the Dufour group, as they now go. There's the gap. It's 16 seconds to Perez, 28 to the group in our camera here. So it really is still a blanket job, and it's still going to be fought out by seconds in tomorrow's time trial.
This is the man leading right now, Tête de la Course, Eddie Mazzolini picking his way through. He's got a big advantage right now because we get to the outskirts of town. These corners are much easier for him to pick his way around as a lone rider. And look at the way he's used all of the road there. Cutting across the apex of the corner, he didn't want to lose any of his momentum. Straight out of the saddle, picking it up to maximum speed if he can. That's going to be around about 47, 48 kilometers an hour. He's looking around these corners right now to see if he can see any banners indicating just exactly how far to go. He'll be looking to see if he can spot the flag that indicates he's approaching the final kilometre of the race. And right now he realizes that they shouldn't have to chase him because he's 33rd in the overall classification at the start of the day, 3.5 minutes behind. He is not a danger to anybody.
But Perez is the man they want, and the thing is, when you've got a big group like this, they're going to start looking at one another and deciding who is going to take up the chase, each blaming the other one for not doing it. Mazzolini's taken this well because he knew he was the least fancied rider in that breakaway, the man who they will pay the least attention to. That was why when he came across, he sat at the back recovering. He had no reason to help them, no reason to distance the rest of the race, so he's waited for his chance, and he's gambling now that they won't want to hunt him down. And this could be a great win. It would only be the 3rd win of his career, but funnily enough, the 2nd of his Tour of Romandie career. Now this is the man they must attack, Francisco Perez, because given all the time back he lost yesterday when he was off the course in the last mile and 1.5 kilometres, he now is in with a chance of taking over the race lead.
Well, he's 17 seconds ahead of the group behind him, and that is important too. We're not too worried about what's happening with Eddie Mazzolini. He's no contest at all to the overall victory here at the Tour of Romandie, but behind, the gap between Perez and the group containing Hamilton and the yellow jersey Laurent Dufour is very important. It actually just came down a fraction there to 16 seconds, but we're actually going onto terrain which is more likely to suit Perez, because if you look at the pedaling action here of Eddie Mazzolini, you get an idea just how difficult this slope is up towards the finishing town.
Well, Mazzolini, 1.75 kilometres to go to the line, still looking over his shoulder. As the peloton here, or the leading group, now trying to sort it out amongst themselves. Remember, there's one man in between, the all-important one man, and that is Francisco Perez.
And at the back of that group, and look at this.
Here he comes.
He's actually got the leader in his sights right now. Eddie Mazzolini is just in front of that car which contains the race referees. He's got the advantage of being able to look at them. Oh, he's looking over his shoulder. He's really under pressure here right now. It's definitely not 9 seconds between these two riders, because he can almost lean out and touch him. Mazzolini won't like this at all, because he's been on the attack for an awful long time, while with the man in the left in the lime green jersey, he's on a counter-attack. He hasn't put in his effort for quite as long as Mazzolini, but the main field is not that far behind either. And you know, Laurent Dufour is in difficulty right now, Phil. He's at the back of that group all of the time, but the whole of the race is actually pretty much in the same straight.
You can see it, it looks so close, and yet because of the climb, there is measurable time gaps there, so big that Perez will be the new leader if he can keep this up now. He certainly is coming up on Mazzolini, who knows he's coming and is not going to wait for him because he can't afford to. Looking for the Flamme Rouge, the kilometre sign. Perez here, racing for more than just the stage win now. A, to wipe away the memories of yesterday, when he was the winner of that stage. And B, to become the new leader of the Tour, with just 20 kilometres remaining tomorrow. Well, they're saying 2 kilometres there. It is amazing, Paul. We're getting misleading information here. The television production are telling us 2 kilometres, which seemed ages ago. Now they're seeing 2 kilometres on the roadside, which is probably accurate. And that difference has made the difference for Mazzolini, because here comes Perez.
That will have hurt his mind. Perez is right there. Look, Mazzolini looked the wrong. What an attack. This is the move by Perez. As soon as he came to the wheel there of Eddie Mazzolini, he went right on the opposite side, and I'm surprised to see that, because Mazzolini is a very experienced professional. As he looked the opposite way, the counter-attack came over, and he's back on the wheel now.
And he got back. I don't know how he did that, really. I thought that Perez had stitched him up. But there is 1 kilometre to go. 1,000 metres. Perez and Mazzolini together. And Perez doesn't need to win at this stage to get the race lead. He just needs time. And I think he's going to get time here, because look at that now. They've opened a 36-second gap, and it has to be because the likes of Hamilton, Dufour and Moussa are looking at one another in that second group and all pointing the finger saying, you must go back.
Look at this.
He's broken the elastic. He's cracked. I think he's got Mazzolini.
He's cracked him, and he didn't even attack then. He looked over his shoulder and just put the pressure on a little bit more. Just behind, you can see the cars of the group of the yellow jersey, but 35 seconds is going to change the overall classification. Francisco Perez was a revelation to us yesterday, when he should have basically have won that stage to the summit of the mountaintop finish on stage 3. But right now he should get revenge from losing out yesterday, Phil. But not only that, it could be a double-headed sword, because if he can hold on to that 30-second advantage over the group, he'll be the new leader of the race tonight.
With just the time trial to come tomorrow, I don't know how he'll manage in the time trial, but he will get the privilege of being last man to start if he can hold them off to the line now. 100% committed here. The thing is, I don't think he would have been able to have got into this position today if he had won yesterday, because he would have already been wearing the yellow jersey, which would have probably have meant that he would not have been allowed the freedom, which has certainly been denied Laurent Dufour today, although Dufour did well to come back up to this leading group. Now Perez on his own, trying to wipe away memories of yesterday. It's a big irony, is that what a strange way sometimes cycle racing works. Off that round the back streets yesterday, winning today. That's 500 metres to go now, and it looks as though a good result now is coming the way of Luis Perez, 29 years of age.
Well, he looks over his shoulder. He's got a fairly serious advantage now, around about 100 metres over Eddie Mazzolini. That correlates about 15-16 seconds on a climb like this, and it really is quite strange. There are some very strange signages at the side of the road here right now, because there was just another sign there indicating 1 kilometre to go, and I think that was finally the banner for the last 1,000 metres for this man.
I think I might have given him a few years older than he should be. I think I said he was 29. In fact, he's 25. And still got quite a few years of racing in those legs. The peloton behind have got to limit their losses. Seconds is going to be a big difference tomorrow in the time trial, being such a short distance. Look at the way they're stretching themselves out now as they try to race for just the time gaps to be a little bit closer. There's no doubt who's going to win. I'm not so sure whether Mazzolini will hang on for second, but certainly Perez is going to get first.
Well, that reaction there in the group came from Tyler Hamilton. He realizes right now that he could be losing the Tour of Romandie, because this man, if he builds up a big advantage, should certainly be able to defend an advantage like that in the time trial tomorrow. The time trial, after all, is only 20 kilometres. He's not thinking about anything right now, Francisco Perez. All he wants to do is try and get himself the stage victory, and there's no sign of weakness at all. In fact, the aggression is still there in his pedaling action. Look at the grimace on his face as he feels now this victory, which escaped him yesterday, is certainly going to be his in around about 30 or 40 seconds time.
3 wins in his career, which only began last year for Luis Perez, turning pro at 24. This time he's ignored all the marshals. He's found the right way home, and he's going to enjoy this, because seconds will prove it, but I do think he's got enough time now to take the leader's yellow jersey. So this will be a double bonus for him. He won the overall and the first stage of the Grand Prix Mcgee.
Did you see that, Phil? He was actually just indicating to the marshals which is the right way to go today.
Well, he's got it right. and everybody on the toes now. Well, that's justice done for you. Francisco Perez this time doesn't salute us from the car park, but from the actual race course. And Mazzolini has hung on to second place. The clock all important here, not for Mazzolini, but for the destiny of the next yellow jersey. Mazzolini coming in, seconds ticking away, about 20 on the line. 20 it is, but it won't worry for Eddie. But who is going to get third place? They're right on him, but look, Paul, almost, it'll be half a minute on the line, so the yellow jersey is off the shoulders of Dufour.
31 seconds, I think. There's Dufour just at the back of the group. Tyler Hamilton is in there as well, but I think when we start adding up all of the times of today's stage, we will see that that ride by Francisco Perez is actually going to give him the lead in this bike race going into the time trial tomorrow.
Well, as we look down here on the finishing line, there is the result, and very good reading now for Francisco Perez. 21 seconds over Mazzolini, more importantly 31 seconds over Laurent Dufour, Tyler Hamilton and Alexander Moussa. They are the big contenders in the time trial now tomorrow. Popovic finishing well in 8th place, Jecke again. All of these riders on the MSS will keep their squad well clear now in the team race. They've had a wonderful race. They certainly have raced as a team and deserve the lead in the team result. And the top 18 was showing you there. It goes back to 50 seconds. But by my calculation, there's going to be 4 to 5 riders within a minute now of the yellow jersey. And I've no idea how good a time trial rider this man is, Francisco Perez, but he's going to have to be very, very good if he's going to hold off the likes of Hamilton and Alexander Moussa in the time trial. There is the overall, and the top 6 riders, in fact, are inside 1 minute. So that's going to be a very tight race tomorrow. Hamilton looking for a difficult 43 seconds, Paul. He may have lost the race today. 43
seconds is an awful lot to make up in just 20 kilometers further down. Popovic in 7th place, Moeller in 8th place. These guys certainly do not have a chance. Certainly I would say the men within the 1 minute have got a chance of getting themselves the overall win. So the suspension is still here at the Tour of Romandie, and it may well be that Perez has done just enough today to win this bike race.
Well, you're seeing now the final time gaps before we go down into Lausanne for the final time trial. And there is Lausanne as we move on to stage number 5 now. I wonder how Tyler Hamilton slept overnight, because I think he might have left himself a little bit too much to do here. A 20.4 kilometer time trial based on the Stade Olympique. This, of course, the home of the world body, the UCI in Lausanne. The Olympic Museum is here, and this the final showdown, and Perez on the verge of winning this race, and what a story he has to tell. Off course 1 minute, winning the next, and now starting the final stage in the Maillot Jaune. Circuit race, a little bit of undulations as you can see. We roll away from the Stade Olympique, and then we go down to the valleys, and then we climb back up to the finishing line at around 608 meters. Rather a difficult approach from the Quai du Chy, from 376 meters up to 608, and of course Perez the last to start.
It's also very important here as we look at Alex Zuller to dose your effort over the final few kilometers. 20th overall, Alex Zuller, 4 minutes behind, but you can never take away from the fact, Phil, that he is an exceptional time trialist.
And still a popular man. Second in this event overall last year, but he's been a pretty anonymous character in the race this time around, I'm sorry to say. We haven't seen him living up to any of the attacks. 6th place overall for Carlos Sastre, who fought hard to get back up alongside his captain Tyler Hamilton yesterday. Now can he turn in a nice time trial? So we're waiting now to see them all start. Here we can go down and see the arrival of Alex Zuller. Best time is Cancellara. Remember him, he won the prologue. Still a star of the future in the making here. This is out on the course. Tough finish on the cobblestones though, and look at that, that's a fantastic average speed by Alex. 50.2 kilometers an hour, but it's still not going to be the best time.
Oh, it's a tough climb this as well. It's a lot tougher than anybody thought, and as I say, you're going to really have to dose your effort in this time trial, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself losing at least a minute on this final climb of the day. Tyler Hamilton looking for 43 seconds in his quest to be the winner of the Tour of Romandie here. There's the Olympic Stadium down in the bottom where the race is based around, and certainly, Phil, it all comes down, I think, to to the final 5 kilometers of the Tour of Romandie. Jekke, next man to start.
So we're getting down the overall classification now. The Milanese boy had a great tour, but it's his teammate who has the lead. Mr. T. Hamilton, to the line, please. Tyler Hamilton now, a very important time trial. Must be questioning whether he can take out that sort of time now. Having just had a glimpse of the climb, I'm not sure whether that will favour Perez or Hamilton, because Perez is the mountaineer.
He looks very concentrated right now. Closed in behind those glasses, inside his helmet. He's almost in his own private world. Here's the hero of yesterday, Eddie Mazzolini. And not a bad ride by Eddie Mazzolini, actually, coming up to the finishing line.
Yes, he'll finish up with a nice position in the overall race. Oscar Pereiro, not a bad time trialist himself. Some names here going through the screen we've seen nothing of all week. But he's come in with the 9th best time for the moment, 27:44 there for Eddie.
Well, he obviously thought he was going to win yesterday. This man has to do a special time trial performance here this afternoon. 4th in the overall classification right now. 43 seconds he needs to win the race, and he's out on course for 20.4 kilometers.
Well, we know his ability. He should have won the Tour of Pays Basque earlier this year, and he lost it in the time trial because the rain was atrocious and he didn't take any chances. But maybe in these lovely spring-like conditions of Lausanne, it might swing around a little bit. No American has won the Tour of Romandie, by the way, since Andy Hampson. I think that was back in 1992.
Hamilton's position looks pretty good here right now. He's nice and firm on the machine, aerodynamic. He's got his hand in the middle of the handlebars. He's pushing the tempo up to probably in excess of 30 miles an hour right now. Gets down onto the lower part of the bar so he can just get the big gear ticking over. He's actually opted this afternoon for a 55-tooth chainring on the front, and that may well be what he can take advantage of on the flatter part of the course. But it's a technical finish to this time trial, Phil, because the uphill section is where everybody will lose it. Alexander Moussa.
Phonak, the team on the block if you ride in Switzerland. Now, the road champion. Very good time trialist as well. He goes out in 3rd from the leaderboard. 35 seconds is what he needs to take care of Francisco Perez. His ride is starting at 2-minute intervals here, down there from the Olympic Stadium, in what is a lovely part of the country. And they've just announced his name and, of course, his country. That's gone down pretty well.
Pretty nervous as well. He realises a good ride by him could win him the Tour of Romandie. And I think he's done very well to stay in contact with all the big climbers. He's a national champion in road racing, and what a coup that would be for him if he could get himself the win.
Back up now with Tyler Hamilton. Remember, he's being chased by the rider who's just started, Alexander Moussa. Hamilton looking pretty cool here, but going slightly downhill though. Here's Moussa.
Same corner.
Sharp left. Continues the descent. It's going to be a very fast ride. This is why Alex Zuller has got in there with the best time so far. 41 minutes he's done.
Nice aerodynamic position. The riders in this time trial compared to the opening prologue are able to use their low profile machines. A full disc wheel here, right up at the right hand side of his cluster there, probably in a 55-tooth chainring on the front and an 11-tooth sprocket at the back. But we're all waiting to see the time splits of Tyler Hamilton, who's looking to try and get himself 43 seconds. The erstwhile leader of the race yesterday, Laurent Dufour, he's never really been a great individual time trialist, Phil, but he, as you can see, his braquet, his gearing there, he's opted for 54/12.
And that's exactly the gear he's pedaling right now. He's got the highest gear on his bike on this steady descent. Drives it and kicks out of that corner. He only slipped to 2nd place yesterday. He's 29 seconds off yellow again. And, you know, I would have put Dufour down as a better time trialist than Perez, but of course he's got to be worried about this rider here, Tyler Hamilton, who is only just a handful of 14 seconds behind Dufour on the overall classification. Tyler's always a little bit suspect on these twisty courses, though. You've really got to keep a close eye on him because he tends to overshoot these bends. We've seen him crash in time trials. We certainly don't want that to happen right now.
we certainly don't, but I think the important thing about this effort here this afternoon is to try and keep something back in stock for that final climb up to the finishing line. It's around about 5 kilometers, and I would say somebody who has misjudged their effort on this time trial here today could lose themselves at least the 43 seconds that Tyler Hamilton needs to win, because that is a very difficult climb up through the town. This man here, though, has been in this situation many, many times throughout his career in a position of defending a high place in the overall classification. We're actually not too far away from the Olympic Museum here. It's just off to the left-hand side in that little forested area, and it's an interesting place to visit if you get a chance to come down here to Lausanne.
Well, this is back out on the climb now with Fabien Yecker. Cancellara was having the best time at this place, at the Petit Chien. And now we've got Yecker on the climb, stamping his authority. I think he's going to slip behind Cancellara because the clock is stopping right over the top of the climb. Yes, he has. Inigo Charot came through. He was the 5th best time. Yecker now finding that all of his attacking riding was left out in the mountains when he really shaped up for the team so well. Carrying them, they almost really push on for a good time because they lead the team race and they don't want to lose it today.
I tell you what, Phil, looking at this climb here right now and the way these riders are suffering on the climb, I have a feeling that the outcome of the individual time trial could be very suspect, and it may well, because of the fact that that climb is so severe, tip over to the advantage of the leader Perez, because he certainly will go up that climb pretty quickly.
Yeah, the same thought had crossed my mind. I don't know if they would have known what the course was like until they arrived here in Lausanne, but certainly, and steady on here, Laurent. That's a bit of a twisty and a full 360 as we turn back on ourselves here. Now Tyler Hamilton on the climb. Still Cancellara is the man to beat at the climb, and it looks as though Tyler Hamilton is going to do it. First indicator we've had that Hamilton might yet pull this one off as he comes up now with the new best time at the top of the climb, because there's no way now he's going to lose that time. Look at this, an extremely good time, 52 kilometers an hour, 19:35. Hamilton is on fire.
That's a big beating of Fabien Cancellara right now, but he's not worried about beating Fabien Cancellara. He's more worried about beating riders like Dufour and, of course, the overall leader, Francesco Perez. You can see here by Hamilton's style just how difficult that climb was, and if you haven't handled that properly, you could put yourself right into oxygen debt at the top of the climb. A bit further back down there, we're looking here at David Moncoutier coming to the finishing line, and he's going to finish well inside the top 10 with a 5th place ride for him.
Yeah, so Alex Zuller stays best at the finish with 41.65. 26, 27. I'm trying to work it out at the moment. A 27-minute ride for Alex.
Alexander Moussa outside the time here. Look at this. He's definitely not got the acceleration of Tyler Hamilton. He's outside of Hamilton's time quite a lot here right now. In fact, he's going to go outside of the top 10, I would think. He'll do around about the same time as Danny Schneider.
Oh dear. Well, this is a shame for Alexander Moussa. It's not going to give him a yellow jersey, that's for sure. He'll have to fight to see if he can hang on to a good overall finish with this ride. He's 3 kilometers an hour slower than Tyler Hamilton at this point. Here comes Jaroslav Popovic, not a challenger for the final yellow jersey. Even so, coming home with a very respectable time trial, 27:45.
Well, big 45-second beating there behind the time of Alex Zuller. Laurent Dufour right now, and he's looking he's outside already the time of Tyler Hamilton, Phil.
Yeah.
He's maybe going to just get inside. Well, no, I don't think he will get inside the time of Fabien Cancellara, but still, he has got the chance and the ability to recuperate in the last 4 or 5 minutes of this very violent effort.
Well, what it does indicate now is that Tyler Hamilton is well on the way to winning the Tour of Romandie. He said the Giro de Romandie, but the Tour of Romandie. And we just need to know now just whether Perez is enjoying the climb here when he gets to it. Here is Fabien Yecker heading into the finish and still challenging that time of 26:59.99. I told you it was 27 minutes for Alex Zuller down there, who's come in with best time. And Fabien Yecker is going to be desperately close. This has been a good ride by Yecker. I think the finish will just be a little bit too far for him to match Alex. Zuller's done a good one today as Yecker continues up that home straight. But even so, Fabian Jecker has had a fabulous Tour of Romandie here and should be a member of the winning team. They'll need that one. He's got a third place finish. That will help them immensely as they continue to win the team prize.
That's a great ride by Jecker. Here we get a chance now, Phil, to see the yellow jersey for the first time. He certainly does not look comfortable in this time trialing discipline of the sport, but maybe he's just holding a bit back for that final climb. He's seen it. He's had a chance to warm up on the circuit earlier on this morning, and he realised that the difference could be made right here and now. Here's Hamilton.
Well, as he's gone out on the hill, Hamilton is coming home. We know it's going to be the best time. It's certainly well clear of Alex Zuller. Zuller at 26.59, and it's a minute, slightly less now, but it's still, remember, once we get over the top of this little rise, it's a bit of a straight. It's obviously going to be best time for Tyler Hamilton. It'll put in number one. The only possible man we've got no information on is Perez. Other than that, Hamilton is heading for the victory in the time trial. Hamilton now hits the line, best time, 26.18. Behind, we know Dufour is suffering. It looked as though Perez was suffering, and here he is, and he is.
There's the time.
Oh dear
59
me.
seconds. He's lost an awful lot. He's lost an awful lot. Right now, he's moved into second place, 15 seconds behind Tyler Hamilton, but he's still got the chance to recover. But you look at him struggling on the slopes of this very steep climb. It's a completely different effort to the position that he had on the big mountains yesterday.
Alexander Moussa also in trouble here now. Their efforts in the mountains have clearly told. Those legs are aching. It looks, Paul, as though Tyler Hamilton better get ready to celebrate. Not just the win on the day, but the win overall.
Absolutely. Laurent Duflo trying to keep himself in the top three in the overall classification. He wore the yellow jersey. On top of that, he held on to second position yesterday. He looked to be suffering a little bit on the last climbs up the mountain, but right now he's trying to keep himself in a podium position, as is this man who, to me, should have been a double stage winner at the Tour of Romandie this year. And right now he's feeling that yellow jersey slip away from his shoulders as he goes into the darkness of the streets here around Lausanne.
Well, we've had the chance to see the beauty of this city of Lausanne. We've certainly gone around all the old quarters. We've found the cobblestones, we've found the hills, very similar to when we started this race in Geneva with a similar, rather hard little prologue time trial. But I think it's now been the end of Perez. He's given this his best shot. He's known the ups and downs, that's for sure, of this year's Tour of Romandie. 10% or 1 in 10 this climb, and those legs just want to get this over with. He's way off the leaderboard now. He's conceded at 1 minute and 10 seconds as I speak to the rider who's already in, Tyler Hamilton.
His legs are buckling.
They're really cracking. I'm not so sure he's even going to hold on to second place overall now.
He's really suffering right now. He's got to try and recuperate some of his composure if he wants to keep himself high in the overall classification. He's through the top of that climb. Alexander Moussa coming up to the line with a good time, but he too is losing serious amounts of minutes to Tyler Hamilton's brilliant ride here in the final day time trial.
So Moussa coming in, and Moussa has actually finished behind Fabian Jecker. That could cost him a place in the overall too. He hits the line, 27.25. He's conceded 1 minute and 6 seconds. And he might well have lost a place too, because Jecker has done a very good time trial. But the arrival, the arrival of Laurent Duflo, as he comes down too, he's trying to hang on just to what would be a second or third place finish in the race now, because Tyler Hamilton, I think it's safe to say, has won the Tour of Romandie, because Perez is not responding out on the course. Here comes Laurent Duflo. Remember, Zuller was the best time until Tyler Hamilton arrived. He still says second best because Dufour is dropping amongst last year's winner of the Tour of Spain, Aitor Gonzalez, and Dufour. That's an extremely good ride for Dufour.
That's a great ride by Laurent Dufour. That'll keep him well up in the overall classification, and I don't think he could have ever expected to ride so close to the specialists like Tyler Hamilton. But the last man to start wearing the yellow jersey, the winner of yesterday's stage, the moral winner of the stage before, and it's slipping a long way down, but he's actually recovered a little bit towards the end.
Yeah, but he's gone behind Dufour, and the Dufour was very close to him, and I think it's cost him a place here. He's not just not going to win the Tour, he's not going to finish second either. As Perez comes up to the line, this has been a real tough 20 kilometers. It's hurt him more than the last 2 days in the mountains, I think. He's not been able to hang on to that yellow jersey, nor the second place in the Tour of Romandie. It's going to cost him a desperately close finish with the battle between him and Laurent Duflo, and Duflo will get it. So 1 minute 20 conceded then, and Tyler Hamilton needed nothing like that. 43 seconds would have done him. As Hamilton here now is going to confirm everything. Best time, remember, Tyler Hamilton. Another chance to look at how he did it. And once again, Paul, this man has lived up to his reputation as a fine time trialist.
Certainly did. He defended over the big mountain passes, and he knew that he had to put in a very special time trial today. He was looking to try and beat the time of Alex Zuller. No mean performer as well when it comes to the individual test, but when you're trying to win a bike race like the Tour of Romandie and your name is Tyler Hamilton, you are one of the top time trialists in the world, well, he knew in the back of the mind he could do it. But I wonder if he realized just how good that man Perez was going to be.
Well, that was the stage result. Hamilton the winner over Zuller, who was a long time in before he finally got knocked off the top of the leaderboard. And looking down the list here, Cancellara in 7th place, continuing his fine form of day one. Moussa slipping there to 8th place. But Tyler Hamilton, showing us the speed of a greyhound, has won the Giro de Romandie.
I went out and I gave it everything I had. I wasn't really concerned about the other riders. You know, I know that Perez had a big lead on me, but I just went out and tried to have the best time trial I possibly could. And whether or not that was good enough, you know, I had to wait and see, but I believe it was.
Who are the most difficult for you this week?
I was the most scared of Yecker, because I could see he was riding incredibly well, and he was very powerful. And you know, I have to take my hat off to the Maya team, because they rode incredibly well, and you know, I can't believe that I won the race.
And after Liège-Bastogne-Liège, now the Tour de Romandie is a good period for you.
Yeah, this is really fantastic. The Tour of Romandie has been a big objective for me all spring, as well as Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and to win both is incredible. It's really beyond words. So, you know, it's been a pleasure being here in Switzerland. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Tyler Hamilton.
So Tyler Hamilton there, coming in with a fast interview just after the finish of the time trial. He gets the jersey that everybody wants, the final one, as the winner of the Tour of Romandie, and of course first American since Andy Hampsten won this event in 1992.
Well, that's a great ride, Phil. I mean, I'm so surprised he was able to actually come here and take part in the race, having had that problem with his wrist. But certainly it didn't help. It didn't really hinder his climbing ability. Dufour there on the right-hand side, finishing in 2nd place in the overall classification. And the man who was the big revelation, Perez, in 3rd.
So Hamilton wins by 33 seconds over Dufour, 38 over Perez, and Yecker, the man he feared most, 4th at 54 seconds. Hope you've enjoyed the coverage. Until the next time, for Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying so long for now.